Chapter 8:24. These moving mountains were all tall creatures. Previously there was only one, but the two had fought for a long time and consumed a lot of energy. Now there was a group of them. Let's go quickly. Zichin shouted and jumped up. At the same time, a loud dragon roar resounded as the Torvosaurus soared into the sky. Zichin jumped on the Torvosaurus, and the Torvosaurus carried him away. Zichin sat cross-legged on the back of the Torvosaurus to recover his energy. This was a tacit understanding formed between the two after many years. They would never waste any extra energy or time. Behind them, there were constant vibrations as the tall creatures caught up. They were only a bit slower than the Torvosaurus, and the distance between them did not increase. Zichin held a few top-grade spirit stones in his hand and used them to recover his energy. On the ancient road, he would save as much as he could, so there was no need to immediately swallow things to recover his energy. There were more than 100 tall creatures chasing after them, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. This was not because the tall creatures were getting faster, but because the Torvosaurus was slowing down. The fierce battle had consumed a lot of energy, and now that it was running at full speed, the Torvosaurus was gradually losing its energy. "Let me do it!" The spirit stone in Zichin's hand shattered. Almost all of the spirit stones he had consumed earlier had been replenished. Just as he finished speaking, the Torvosaurus' huge body instantly shrunk. It was like a green belt that wrapped around Zichin's waist. Zichin's body flashed with a golden light as he replaced the Torvosaurus and began to speed up. The Torvosaurus only needed to wake up to recover its energy, so it did not need to swallow anything else. Therefore, before it woke up, Zichin would be the one running away. Once this group of tall and big creatures launched an attack, a round of concentrated fire was enough to eliminate Zichin and the Torvosaurus. Zichin, who had increased his speed, immediately displayed his extreme speed and instantly left the group of tall and big creatures far behind. While running at full speed, Zichin finally had the time to observe this world. This was a relatively normal world with mountains and forests. The only regret was that there was no heaven and earth spirit chi here. However, there were birds and beasts, and they were not weak. This world was very similar to the barbarian world, but it didn't have the barbarian's power inheritance. As a result, although the attacks of the tall creatures were powerful, they were all close-range attacks. As long as they kept a distance, they wouldn't be in much danger. These tall creatures seemed to know no exhaustion. They had been chasing Zichin for several hours, and Zichin's energy consumption was gradually increasing. "Forget it, let's find the exit first." The lightning wings on Zichin's back flashed as he transformed into a bolt of silver lightning and began to search for an exit. After flying for hundreds of thousands of miles, Zichin finally found the exit. The exit was an enormous gate that occupied more than half of the sky, not to mention a single person. Even these creatures could leave through it. There were tens of thousands of gigantic creatures around the door. Some of them were resting, while others were eating. What they were eating were gigantic beasts that were bitten to death, then torn apart, chewed, and swallowed. Zichin's appearance immediately alarmed these creatures. They let out sharp whistling sounds and attacked Zichin. As for the attacking objects, they were either gigantic rocks, skulls, or dried bones of beasts. These were originally very common objects, but when they were thrown with great force, they were like meteors that whizzed towards Zichin. Tens of thousands of meteors fell with a whistling sound and instantly drowned Zichin. Under such great force, Zichin's protective light shield was immediately shattered. His level 6 body was instantly beaten black and blue, and some parts were even bleeding. At the same time, under such great force, Zichin was like a giant bird that was attacked and was smashed down from the sky. After Zichin landed on the ground, many creatures stomped towards Zichin. The sky suddenly darkened as giant feet covered the sky and stomped down with great force. Zichin had no time to be shocked. He swallowed the fresh blood that he was about to spit out and turned into a silver light again to avoid the fatal stomp. He then left without looking back. As he was escaping, Zichun could not help but cough up blood, pale golden blood sprinkled from the sky, and he was in a very sorry state. This was the first path of the 29 ancient roads. When Zichun entered, he was hunted down, and the threat of death shrouded him from time to time. After that, Zichun began his life as a fugitive. During his escape, Zichun's resources were constantly depleted. With the exit blocked, Zichun could not leave. At this moment, he was like a turtle in a jar, waiting to be caught. Once caught, he would die. In this place, Zichun did not even have the chance to stop and catch his breath, let alone cultivate or break through. It was as if these tall creatures would never be exhausted. They chased after Zichun with all their might. This situation of being chased lasted for 7 days. After 7 days, Zichun found a towering mountain peak. This mountain peak was emitting a unique aura. When Zichun approached the mountain peak, his body began to become unstable and he fell from the sky. The reason why Zichun fell was because this mountain peak was emitting an extremely strong suction force. This suction force made Zichun unprepared and he fell directly. After falling, Zichun wanted to control his body and get up again, but he found it extremely difficult. This suction force was gravity. It suppressed Zichun and made him unable to move. It's over. Suddenly losing control of his body, Zichun's face was filled with despair. That was because those tall creatures would quickly catch up. Once they caught up, only death would await him and the tortoise dragon. Zichun let out a furious roar. Golden light flashed around his body, and a powerful energy surged through his body. His bones emitted cracking sounds as he forcibly blocked this suction force and slowly stood up. At this moment, Zichun felt like he was carrying a mountain on his back. He staggered into the mountain peak. The staggering Zichun was only a bit faster than a tortoise. If this continued, only death would await him. Suddenly, Zichun seemed to have noticed something and turned his head to look back. Zichun had already wasted quite a bit of time here. According to reason, those tall creatures should have already caught up to him, but there was no movement behind him. After turning his head, Zichun really did see those tall creatures chasing after him, but they didn't come forward. Instead, they stood outside the mountain peak as if they were extremely afraid of this suction force. They paced back and forth outside the suction force, surrounding the entire mountain peak. In addition, there were also some creatures moving rocks from the distance. They whistled through the air and threw them at Zichun. Because of the suction force, those rocks fell in a straight line when they got close to the mountain peak. They were simply unable to get close to Zichun. Seeing this scene, Zichun laughed heartily. Haha, the heavens never seal off all paths. He was saved. He was saved by this suction force. Of course, it could also be said that he was trapped. But Zichun didn't think so. Inside the suction force, those tall creatures were unable to do anything to him, and he had enough time. During this time, Zichun could strive for a breakthrough in strength and then charge out. Therefore, Zichun stopped here and prepared to stay here to cultivate. As for the Torvosaurus, it continued to sleep at the side. Now, Zichun's strength was already at the pinnacle of grade 6. Once he broke through, he would be at grade 7. This was a watershed. Although it was only a difference of 1 grade, the difference in strength was huge. Using the Primal Core Realms classification, grade 6 was the middle stage of the Primal Core Realm, and grade 7 was the late stage of the Primal Core Realm. Zichun's strength had reached the watershed. So had his elemental energy. He was at the peak of the early stage of the Primal Core Realm, not far from the middle stage. However, it wasn't easy to break through these 2 bottlenecks. Based on the situation here, Zichun's strength breakthrough was slightly easier than his elemental energy breakthrough. This was because he had discovered many resources on the ancient road that could increase his strength. Therefore, Zichen began to focus on increasing his strength. Outside the gravitational field of the mountain, the group of tall creatures didn't stay idle. They first made sharp provocative sounds at Zichen. When they found that it was useless, they moved more large rocks. On the second day, a few more tall creatures came. These creatures were much stronger than before. After they appeared, they lifted large rocks and smashed them at Zichen, who was in the middle of the gravity mountain. The rocks let out sharp whistling sounds and passed through the gravity mountain in an instant. Then they resisted the huge gravitational force of the mountain and smashed toward Zichen. Zichen heard the sound and opened his eyes. When he saw the large rocks whistling towards him, his expression changed drastically. He grabbed the Torvosaurus and dodged to the side. Pum! The large rocks brushed past Zichen's body and smashed into the ground. The huge impact caused the mountain to shake. Zichen's forehead was already covered in cold sweat. He was even more afraid of these tall creatures. After knowing that this place wasn't safe, Zichen walked towards the depths of the mountain. Behind him, there were many rocks that were not willing to give up. However, they could only fall to the place where Zichen was standing. They couldn't go any further. After advancing for about 100 meters, Zichen stopped and began to focus on cultivation. The Torvosaurus was still sleeping. Zichen began to drink wine and then refined it. After his body was filled with energy, Zichen began to walk in the gravitational field. If he wanted to increase his strength, he couldn't just focus on cultivation. Before that, he still needed to consume energy. Just like when he wrestled with the barbarian bulls and barbarian tigers. The gravity here was very strong. In the beginning, Zichen could only walk slowly. However, as he slowly adapted, Zichen's steps gradually became stable. As time passed, Zichen's speed became faster and faster. Not only were his steps smooth, he could even jog. This scene caused the distant creatures to stare at him with wide eyes. Then, more rocks were smashed down. He wasn't satisfied with being able to jog. Soon after, he picked up another large rock and started to run. Zichen was cultivating in the gravity mountain. The tall creatures outside were still guarding there. They would throw out many rocks every day. As Zichen's strength became stronger, the rocks thrown out by them also became denser and denser. This situation lasted for an entire year. Zichen was also trapped for an entire year. During this year, the Torvosaurus was still sleeping. He could also increase his strength while sleeping. Chapter 8:25. After several years, his strength had finally broken through. With the breakthrough of the perfect body, Zichen's combat strength was equivalent to a late-stage primal core cultivator. This was an increase in his strength realm. At the same time, it also indicated an increase in his combat strength. The golden light emitted by Zichen's body became even more resplendent as an extremely powerful pressure spread out from his body. This pressure alarmed the sleeping Torvosaurus and the tall creature in the distance. The tall creatures let out sharp screeches. Then, as usual, they picked up rocks and threw them at Zichen. During this year, while Zichen's strength had been rapidly increasing, the strength of these tall creatures had also been increasing. The rocks they threw also grew further and further, causing Zichen to go deeper and deeper into the cave twice. The dormant Torvosaurus blankly opened its eyes. Feeling this extremely strong pressure, it understood that Zichen had already broken through. The Torvosaurus's eyes instantly brightened. Moreover, after a year of deep sleep, the Torvosaurus's strength had also increased. With his strength breaking through one level, his combat strength was much stronger than before. Zichen was confident that he could deal with the tall creature. After leaving, he turned his head and said to the Torvosaurus, "Torvosaurus, it's time for us to leave." The Torvosaurus nodded and transformed into a green beam of light that flew towards Zichen before wrapping around Zichen's waist. Zichen stood up and strode forward. Now, the gravity of the mountain peak no longer affected Zichen at all. Furthermore, in the past year, not only had Zichen's strength increased, but his physique had also strengthened under the gravity's pressure. Outside the gravity mountain peak, when they saw Zichen come out, the tall creatures let out shrill cries. On the one hand, they were calling for reinforcements, but at the same time, they picked up more rocks and threw them at Zichen. More and more tall creatures gathered here. They lifted up thousands of kilograms or even tens of thousands of kilograms of rocks and threw them at Zichen. In an instant, it was as if meteors of destruction were falling from the sky. Sharp whistling sounds rang out everywhere. Looking at these stones and thinking about the companionship of so many creatures over the past year, Zichen's expression became extremely gloomy. The golden light around him became even more dazzling, and his spiritual thoughts and strength were already combining. Even though he was unable to unleash 20% of his full power, the combined power of the two was still over 120%. At the same time, a loud dragon's roar rang out as silver light flashed through the air, and the dragon's soul spear appeared. Zichen held his spear and attacked the falling boulders. Silver light flashed on his spear, and spear lights kept appearing, shattering the boulders one after another. Bang! Bang! The sound of rocks exploding rang out continuously. Zichen held his spear and moved forward in a straight line. Wherever he passed, all the rocks shattered. Not a single one was able to touch his body. Zichen's strength had increased by one level, and his battle prowess had also increased by many times. He no longer felt any pressure when facing the tall creature. By the time Zichen walked out, there were already hundreds of tall creatures here. After Zichen appeared, they all stepped forward and raised their feet to stomp on him. The scene from a year ago reappeared. Last time, Zichen had been defeated. However, this time, Zichen took the initiative to meet the attack. His figure flashed, and his figure dissipated like a wisp of green smoke. When he reappeared in the next moment, he was already in the air. Zichen, who was in the air, looked extremely petite. The fist he threw out was even more pitifully small. It was not even as big as the eyes of the tall creatures. However, when this fist landed on the creatures, it caused a tremor. The small fist contained a huge amount of power, and it actually sent a creature flying. At the same time, Zichen swung his fist again. Golden fist lights kept flashing, and Zichen was like a bolt of lightning. He moved left and right, and sometimes he moved forward, and sometimes he moved backward. Pung, 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 pung. One creature after another was sent flying. Some of them were directly pierced through by Zichen's spear, dying instantly. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of tall creatures were all knocked down. Among them, a dozen died. Zichen discovered a kind of energy crystal in the bodies of the dead creatures. It was the size of a fist, and it should be the source of their strength. This kind of energy crystal was a very strange substance. However, Zichen was unable to absorb it. Presumably, this was the so-called harvest from the ancient road, something that could be exchanged for resources. Zichen naturally wouldn't be polite to these tall creatures that had almost killed him. Moreover, after a year of companionship and greeting them with rocks every day, Zichen's killing intent had only increased. A sharp whistling sound rang out once more. This time, the tall creatures attacked once more. Some of them used rocks to attack, while others began to close in on Zichen, wanting to forcefully kill him. Kill! Zichen raised his head and roared. At this moment, he was like a killing god as he charged towards the tall creatures. His spear flickered with cold light, and his fists flickered unceasingly. All kinds of sounds rang out unceasingly. After a moment, Zichen's surroundings became quiet. None of these tall creatures were lucky enough to escape. They were all killed, and there was no lack of extremely powerful existences among them. Zichen already had several hundred energy crystals in his hand. These energy crystals could be divided according to the strength of the creatures. The stronger ones would have bigger energy crystals, while the weaker ones would have smaller energy crystals. Chen could conclude that these were the real harvests, things that could be exchanged for resources. Along the way, he was fully aware of the importance of resources. However, just as Chen was studying the energy crystal in his hand, he saw the barbaric dragon at his waist suddenly open its mouth and swallow the energy crystal in Chen's hand. After swallowing the energy crystal, the barbaric dragon smacked its lips with an expression of enjoyment. Chen was startled. He looked at the barbaric dragon and said, "This kind of energy crystal is useful to you." The barbaric dragon nodded seriously. Soon after, Chen felt relieved. These tall creatures had something in common with the barbarians. That was, they both used their physical strength. The only difference was that these creatures could fly. Obviously, this was because of the energy crystal, and among the barbarians, it was said that they could fly at level 11. And at level 11, it was obvious that they had to produce something like an energy crystal to allow them to fly. Just like the original flood dragon, the reason why they could fly was because of the dragon crystal in their body. Although he didn't know why these creatures could produce energy crystals before reaching level 11. This didn't hinder Chen's understanding of them. The energy crystal was useful to the barbaric dragon, and it could also be exchanged for resources. It could be said that it was a good thing that could only be chanced upon by luck. Therefore, Chen had a crazy idea. Once this idea appeared, he couldn't suppress it anymore. Therefore, Chen held his spear and flew towards the exit. If he wanted to obtain more energy crystals, the only way was to go to the exit. There were tens of thousands of creatures there. When Chen appeared again, the pressure he released was sensed by the tall creatures. These creatures were still living a life of luxury. When they saw Chen suddenly appear, they were all surprised. But the surprise only lasted for a moment. Following that, they became violent. They grabbed the things in their hands and threw them at Chen. There were even some large pieces of flesh dripping with blood. The heavenly thunder wings had already appeared on Chen's back. This time he was prepared. When these creatures attacked, he turned into a streak of lightning and flew forward. One against a group, Chen had plenty of experience. It seemed that since his debut, Chen had always been one against a group. Chen rushed into the group of creatures and swept his spear. Those who were hit by the spear would either be sent flying or injured. If they were unlucky, they would die. Chen rushed into the group of creatures and began to madly slaughter them. Because his body was small, he was surrounded by tall creatures. This caused the other creatures to be unable to attack him. Therefore, the whole group of creatures was in complete chaos. Although there were tens of thousands of tall creatures, only a dozen or so could attack Chen. Just like that, the number of tall creatures began to decrease. Suddenly, Chen felt a sense of danger. Just as he turned around, he saw a fist as big as a millstone. It was smashing towards Chen. Chen blocked with his spear. Silver light flashed on the spear. Clang! The two collided, and a sonorous sound erupted. Chen was forced back hundreds of meters. This was an even more powerful tall creature. It should be the strongest creature Chen had met so far. Chen's expression changed slightly. He then unleashed a powerful attack. First, he used extreme yin and extreme yang, causing the yin and yang energies to collide. Then he used Thunderbolt Finger and all kinds of powerful battle skills. At the same time, just as the tall creature was struggling to defend against these energy attacks, Chen flashed and attacked with his spear. Silver light flashed, and a loud dragon roar resounded from the dragon's soul spear. Then, the 2-meter-long spear suddenly expanded to dozens of meters long and pierced through the head of the tall creature. The spear pierced through, and a surge of yin and yang energy surged. The tall creature's head suddenly exploded. From the moment the tall creature repelled Chen to Chen killing it, it only took a few breaths. It could be said to be clean and efficient. After the tall creature's body fell down, the other creatures finally reacted. It was obviously too late for them to help. After killing so many people, Zichen had consumed a lot of energy. For these energy crystals, Zichen naturally wouldn't be stingy. He took out a small bottle from his spatial spirit ring and filled it with fine wine. These were left to him by the soul flame on the ancient road. This was a true treasure. As long as he drank a mouthful, not only would he recover his yuan power, but he would also recover his strength. Normally, Zichen also treated this thing as a treasure and couldn't bear to drink it. But today he had no choice but to drink it. After drinking a mouthful, the rich wine made Zichen a little tipsy. However, his mind was still very sharp. At the same time, the burning wine made Zichen's battle intent even more powerful. Amidst the repeated slaughter, the number of tall and large creatures rapidly decreased. Moreover, facing this one-sided slaughter, the tall and large creatures finally began to feel fear and began to flee. Zichen chased them like crazy. Just like how he was chased a year ago, this time he directly chased them for thousands of miles. After losing more than 2/3 of the tall creatures, Zichen finally gave up. It wasn't that he didn't want to kill anymore, but that killing a creature was too exhausting. Moreover, Zichen had also consumed a lot of energy during the slaughter. Zichen had consumed a lot of energy as well as energy recovery pills. As for the wine that could recover all his strength in one mouthful, Zichen really didn't dare to drink too much because it was easy to get drunk. Even if he recovered his strength, he would still be drunk. Chapter 8:26. The corpses of the large life forms nearly covered the entire ground. The Torvosaurus shot out from Zichen's waist and began to clean up the battlefield. But to quickly clean up tens of thousands of corpses was an extremely difficult matter. By the time Zichen finished killing them all, the Torvosaurus had only cleaned up 1/3 of them. Next, Zichen also joined in the cleanup. These energy crystals were naturally good things, but there weren't many resources to exchange for on this ancient road. Wasting resources to exchange for these useless things was undoubtedly a waste. That was why Zichen didn't kill them all. After collecting all the energy crystals, Zichen discovered that there were actually 15,000 of them, and among the many energy crystals, there were close to 100 that were the size of a human head. They all belonged to the strongest life forms. Seeing so many energy crystals, Zichen was a bit stunned. But the Torvosaurus was incomparably happy. It directly picked the largest one and swallowed it, happily refining it. After putting away the energy crystals, Zichen stayed here, quietly waiting for his strength and origin energy to recover to their peak. A day later, those large life forms that had fled returned. But when they saw that Zichen was still here, their faces filled with fear and they fled once more. Zichen saw them, but he didn't kill them. He had used an entire day and night to recover all his strength. He really didn't want to waste it. After recovering his strength, Zichen stood up and called out to the Torvosaurus. It was time to set off. Zichen gripped the dragon's soul spear tightly and stepped onto the second ancient road. On the ancient road of the strongest smelting trial, the current ancient road of the ancient road had no way of exploring it. Thus, no one knew what Zichen had experienced on the ancient road of the strongest. On other ancient roads, there would occasionally be areas without heaven and earth spiritual energy, but these situations were very rare. But for Zichen, areas without heaven and earth spiritual energy were as common as eating rice. He had long since become accustomed to it. From the moment he stepped onto the ancient road until now, it seemed that there was only a little bit of heaven and earth spiritual energy in 19 miles. During this trip to the ancient road of the strongest trial, Zichen had seen many creatures he had never seen before. He had seen many special beasts. Although it was filled with danger, it had also increased his knowledge. When Zichen reached the 28th ancient road, he finally sensed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This was a human encampment, and there were human cultivators living here. However, when Zichen tried to interact with them, he was shocked to find that these humans possessed extraordinary combat strength. Such powerful combat strength could only allow them to launch a few attacks, but each attack was undoubtedly extremely powerful. The moment he saw his opponent, Zichen thought of Zhang Tong, who had been in the Heavenly Barbarian Pavilion. It seemed like Zhang Tong could only make 3 attacks, but each attack was extremely powerful. It was the same for this special tribe. However, they weren't only limited to 3 attacks. Some of them were even able to launch dozens of attacks. After intimidating these special humans with his powerful combat strength, Zichen began to study their combat techniques. It had to be said that a technique that could quickly unleash a powerful attack could save one's life at a critical moment. Moreover, using all the strength in one's body to attack would undoubtedly greatly increase one's combat strength. Zichen stayed in this world for 2 years. 2 years later, Zichen relied on his unique innate divine ability and the techniques of this tribe to create his own unique attack method. This attack method was similar to his opponent's, but the attack power was more powerful. Moreover, each attack could maximize one's combat strength. After several years, Zichen had reached the ancient road of the 28th century. The amount of resources he had consumed to reach this point had left him speechless, but the harvests he had obtained were things that he couldn't immediately use. Zichen urgently needed to find the trading market to exchange for useful resources. Fortunately, he was about to reach the 28th ancient road. After 2 years, Zichen could leave. However, Zichen, who had created his own unique technique, didn't leave immediately. This world had spiritual energy of heaven and earth, so naturally, there would be resources he needed. Zichen was afraid that the situation on the 28th ancient road would be the same as on the 28th ancient road. Therefore, he stayed here to look for the resources he needed. This search took him 2 years. Zichen had already been on the strongest ancient road for more than 20 years. In these 2 years, Zichen changed the entire world. He collected all the resources he could use and recover. Normally, he would look down on things in the outside world. However, in this resource-deficient ancient road, these things became priceless treasures. Many cultivators didn't dare to set foot in this dangerous place, but Zichen dared to go. In this dangerous place, Zichen had experienced many life and death crises. However, after resolving them, his gains were not small. After 2 years, Zichen left and stepped on the 29th ancient road. Originally, the first ancient road had extremely thin spiritual energy. However, the 29th ancient road had no spiritual energy at all. It gave Zichen the feeling that this was a desolate and defeated small world. It was deathly still. Zichen and the Torvosaurus began to go deeper. After flying for thousands of miles, they saw piles of fine soil. These were all caused by the weathering of buildings. Zichen quickly descended and searched through the fine soil. After searching through about 10 piles, Zichen finally found some resources. However, too much time had passed. More than half of the sealed spiritual energy on these resources had dissipated. This caused the resources inside to be greatly reduced. Subsequently, Zichen began to search for useful resources in the weathered fine soil. This search took more than half a month. Zichen searched very carefully. However, the resources he found made Zichen want to cry. He didn't even have 1/3 of the resources on the 19th ancient road. Such a small amount of resources was simply unable to support Zichen to enter the next ancient road. If it wasn't for the harvest on the 28th ancient road, Zichen might have given up on this ancient road. After stepping on the 31st ancient road, Zichen became even more careful. When he attacked, he used a more economical method to kill his enemies. If he could kill them with one attack, Zichen would definitely not use a second useless attack. Zichen walked from the 31st ancient road to the 39th ancient road with great difficulty. After a long time, Zi-Chen's elemental energy finally transformed again. This was Zi-Chen's greatest gain after stepping on the 31st Ancient Road. His elemental energy had finally broken through from the early stage Primal Core realm to the mid-stage Primal Core realm. This breakthrough caused Zi-Chen's combat strength to increase once again. At the same time, his chances of survival also increased. The battle was still ongoing. Even though Zi-Chen had broken through, his life was still in danger on the Ancient Road. His strongest trump card, the Thunder and Lightning of the 9th level of the Thunder Dominion, was also decreasing rapidly while helping Zi-Chen resolve the crisis. It had to be said that although the Ancient Road was fraught with danger, it was also a great training ground. Zi-Chen's physique, which had broken through to become a Grade 7 warrior, had also reached the peak of Grade 7 and was not far from Grade 8. From the 31st Ancient Road to the 38th Ancient Road, Zi-Chen had faced endless battles. Among the 8 small realms, none of them had any spiritual energy. By the time he reached the 39th Ancient Road, Zi-Chen's energy had been depleted once again. However, this time it wasn't just Zi-Chen's resources that were depleted. Zi-Chen's Thunder and Lightning trump card was also depleted. This was the only thing that Zi-Chen could rely on, but it was also depleted in the face of danger time and time again. Before stepping into the 39th Ancient Road, Zi-Chen closed his eyes and prayed for a long time. Moreover, he strictly asked the Torvosaurus to pray as well. If he didn't see the trading market soon, Zi-Chen would have no chance of surviving on the Ancient Road. The heavens seemed to have heard Zi-Chen's prayer, but they played a big joke on Zi-Chen. There were still some resources on the 1929 Ancient Road, but when Zi-Chen reached the 39th Ancient Road, he was completely dumbfounded. There were no resources here, not even the slightest bit. Not to mention the wine that could restore one's strength and yuan energy in a single gulp. There wasn't even a drop of ordinary water. This place was empty. It 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 was empty. Zi-Chen wanted to commit suicide. There were no resources here. There was nothing. Zi-Chen was completely dumbfounded. Along the way, the Torvosaurus, which had been continuously devouring energy crystals, had successfully broken through to Grade 8. The combat strength of a Grade 8 Torvosaurus was not weaker than a mortal origin realm martial artist. If it was placed in the Bedlam lands, it would definitely be able to intimidate the patriarchs of the overlords. However, this was the Ancient Road. There were many existences that were stronger than the Torvosaurus. Moreover, every time they appeared, they would appear in groups. It was obviously unrealistic to expect the Torvosaurus to carry him through the rest of the Ancient Road. Looking at the empty 39th Ancient Road, Zi-Chen was in a daze. Previously, Zi-Chen had sensed that there was still a chance of survival on the Ancient Road. Heaven never bars one's way. However, after arriving at the 39th Ancient Road, Zi-Chen understood what it meant to have no way out. The current him had no way out. He could not retreat. He could only move forward. However, there was only darkness in front of him. What was even more infuriating was that there was no heaven and earth Ling Qi in the 39th Ancient Road. It was impossible for Zi-Chen to automatically restore his yuan energy. Sigh. Looking at the empty space, Zi-Chen let out a bitter sigh. Then he took out some firewood and some beast meat from his spirit ring and started to roast the meat. These were the special beasts that Zi-Chen had killed along the way. The meat was not bad. On one hand, it could increase his strength. On the other hand, it could also increase his yuan energy. The current Zi-Chen was undoubtedly in dire straits. He was in dire straits. Even if he ate roasted meat to restore his yuan energy, he still had to control himself. When his strength had recovered to 100% and his yuan energy had recovered to 80%, Zi-Chen walked to the exit of the Ancient Road. He took a deep breath and entered the 4th Ancient Road with the Torvosaurus. As soon as he appeared on the 4th Ancient Road, Zi-Chen saw countless creatures. These creatures were all small beasts. They had sharp claws and sharp fangs. As soon as Zichen appeared, these creatures pounced on him. In the blink of an eye, Zichen was drowned by these small creatures. After a while, Zichen rushed out. Zichen was covered in blood. Some of it was his, and some of it was from the creatures. These small creatures' attacks were extremely sharp. Even if Zichen had the physique of a peak grade 7, he could still break through his defense in an instant. However, when the attack power was strong, the defense of these creatures was not very good. Thus, Zichen took the opportunity to rush out. After rushing out, Zichen fought, escaped, and looked for the exit. Just like this, Zichen's body was covered in more and more blood. His silver spear was also soaked in red blood. During this period, the Torvosaurus was also injured. Zichen began to consume the limited resources. After killing his way out of the 4th Ancient Road, he continued to enter the 4th Ancient Road. Chapter 8:27. In the beginning, there were only 2 kinds of ancient roads. One was the strongest ancient road, which was known as the training ground for powerhouses. The other was the well-known 9th ranked ancient road, which was known as the most mysterious place. Over the course of countless years, the force that controlled the ancient roads had forcibly added 8 more ancient roads to these 2 ancient roads. Although there were only 8, the number of small worlds contained within them was innumerable. It could be said that this was a really big deal. Among these 8 ancient roads, the innumerable small worlds had intersected with the original ancient roads. This was the most precious and inconceivable thing. During this period of time, the body-tempering road that had been opened from the strongest ancient road made the force of the ancient road extremely proud. This body-tempering road was the original barbarian world, which was extremely suitable for body tempering. Apart from that, there were also countless ancient roads of the strongest that had been broken open. If one's luck was good enough, they would have a chance to enter the ancient roads of the strongest that had been broken open. These ancient roads had an extremely important characteristic, and that was that they were extremely useful for cultivation. For example, in the barbarian world, any cultivator who entered would have their physical strength break through to the 6th level. The other ancient roads were relatively similar. If they didn't have a lot of resources, then they had other precious treasures or rather strange things. These ancient roads that had been successfully opened and intersected with the other ancient roads. The only thing that didn't was the hardships that Zichen had experienced along the way. If it was said that Zichen had entered the barbarian world and entered the other world with resources through the ancient roads, then he should have obtained the fruits of his hardships. However, if others rashly entered this place, they would have taken advantage of the loopholes of the ancient roads. The 5th 9 ancient road was the first gathering place for all trial challengers. Here, it didn't matter if you were a 1st class, the strongest, or 9th ranked ancient road. As long as you made it to the 5th 9 ancient road alive, then you would appear in the first human gathering place. In front of the human gathering place, there was an extremely mysterious 5th 8 ancient road. This ancient road was discovered by a peerless powerhouse in the past. Even among the strongest ancient roads, this ancient road's ranking was extremely high. It was a true land of great opportunities. After the other party discovered it, they forcibly used their formidable strength to break open this world. Then, they used the power of laws to connect to the other ancient roads. If a cultivator was lucky enough, they would automatically be teleported here when they reached the 5th ancient path. If the world of the barbarian race was a world that focused on the cultivation of power and belonged to the body cultivators, then this world was an opportunity for elemental force cultivators. This was because this place produced a special substance that could make origin energy pure. Moreover, there were many powerful battle skills that had been lost. If one's luck was good enough and the opportunity was great enough, one could obtain a powerful inherited battle skill. All of the cultivators who had arrived here had coincidentally arrived at the 5th 8 ancient path and had come across an opportunity to be teleported here. This world was large enough and there were many lucky chances. However, there were very few dangers. The only thing they needed to be wary of was the foreign trial challengers. The number of trial challengers who arrived here was surprisingly high. Therefore, after these trial challengers arrived, they would gather in groups of 3 to 5 and form some sort of alliance to resist the other trial challengers. In this world, there was a silver domain. This was the domain of heavenly lightning. From the outside, other than the resplendent silver light and the lightning snakes swimming around, there were no other changes. Even the sound couldn't be heard. But as long as one entered this silver world, they would feel a kind of apocalyptic danger. If they rashly entered, even a heaven realm expert would die. And in this silver world, there was something called lightning liquid essence. It was said that after swallowing this lightning liquid essence, an ordinary cultivator would immediately become a heaven realm expert with pure origin energy. And the lightning liquid essence's effect was to temper origin energy. It would make the already pure origin energy even purer without any impurities. This kind of thing was a priceless treasure for ordinary cultivators, but it was also the same for heaven realm experts. It was said that as long as a Hotian cultivator refined it, they could transform into a Scientian cultivator. Their combat strength would increase by several times. As the name implied, a Hotian martial artist cultivated a cultivation method that produced pure origin energy. Like Ziqin, this was a Hotian martial artist. As for a Scientian martial artist, they were like Ling, born with a pure spiritual body. As long as they had a suitable cultivation method, they could become a powerful Scientian martial artist. At this moment, outside the silver world, there were 2 groups of trial challengers arguing over the ownership of a drop of lightning liquid essence. The 2 sides were both Hotian cultivators, and each side had exactly 3 people. Yanwu, you have to understand that we asked for this drop of lightning liquid essence first. So, you'd better not go too far, said a burly man coldly as he stared at the youth in front of him. Duji, are you an idiot? It belongs to whoever asked for it. What do you think the lightning liquid essence is? The youth called Yan Wu snorted coldly. I still say the same thing. It's up to Lei Ming. Whoever he wants to give the lightning liquid essence to can have it. Lei Ming already agreed to it. It was ours in the first place. Why should we share it with you? Du Ji was still unwilling to accept this. The 2 Hotian cultivators beside him also had ugly expressions. Clearly, this Yan Wu fellow was pestering them endlessly. He was blatantly trying to steal their things. Yan Wu glanced at the burly man, disdain flashing in his eyes. You're merely of the acquired earth element. You're only slightly stronger in defense, but your attacks are useless. I'm letting Lei Ming choose now, so I'm giving you some face. So you have to accept it. The Hotian earth element represented Hotian cultivators. It was an earth element technique of the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth elements. The Martial Heaven Alliance produced Hotian cultivators. But just like other large powers, the Martial Heaven Alliance also had other powers. These powers were tangled up and varied in size, but according to their factions, they could be divided into 5 factions. Those were the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth elements. Of the 5 elements, the metal element had the sharpest attacks, the fire element was the most berserk, the wood element could use wood energy, the water element was mostly female, and the earth element was mostly male. Furthermore, they were extremely powerful, but their defensive power was greater than their offensive power. In other words, their defensive power was stronger than their offensive power. Of course, that was only for Hotian cultivators. To outsiders, Hotian cultivators were Hotian cultivators. No matter what faction they belonged to, they were all incomparably powerful. Of the 2 factions of Hotian cultivators, Du Ji's side was an earth element cultivator, while Yan Wu's side was a berserk fire element cultivator. The fire element's attacks were not only powerful, but they also contained a berserk flame poison. They naturally had the upper hand against the earth element. While the 2 factions were arguing over a drop of lightning essence, A silver-robed youth was standing on one side. The silver-robed youth was tall and slender. Silver light flickered around his body like a silver snake. There was a silver lightning mark on his forehead that emitted silver lightning. Just by looking at his figure and appearance, he should have been a handsome man with a jade-like complexion. Unfortunately, at this moment, his face was as fat as a pig's head, and there were clear finger marks on his face. He was actually beaten beyond recognition. In his hand was a drop of lightning essence. This was the liquefied energy of heavenly lightning. It was something unique to the ancient path, and it had extraordinary effects. Lei Ming, then tell me, who should I give this lightning essence to? Du Ji's cold eyes fell on Lei Ming. The threat on his face was indescribable. Lei Ming was in a dilemma. His hand that was holding the lightning essence was trembling. He looked at Yan Wu and then at Du Ji. His mouth moved slightly, unable to make a decision. Lei Ming, don't be anxious. Think carefully. Think carefully, Yan Wu said lightly, but the coldness in his eyes made Lei Ming's heart tremble. Lei Ming was holding the lightning essence now. He was so scared that he didn't know who to give it to. No matter who he gave it to, the other side would beat him or even kill him. In this place, Lei Ming was extremely cooperative. He would agree to any request, but he was still beaten because there was a situation of snatching. The fearful Lei Ming was hesitant, unable to make a decision. Turbulent energy raged from the sky. The sky suddenly broke open, and a crazy murderous aura fell from the broken void. Feeling this murderous aura, everyone's expression changed. They all looked up at the sky. A huge black hole appeared in the broken void. A figure walked out of the black hole. This was a figure whose entire body was covered in dried, pitch-black blood, a figure that would make one feel nauseous. It was because there were several layers of blood stains on his body, all of which were left behind after the blood had completely dried up. There were also some pale white substances, unknown as to what they were. He was holding a long spear in his hand. The spear was already soaked in dried blood. It was impossible to see its original color. There was a black belt around his waist. The head of the belt looked like some kind of black, ferocious beast. This was a human figure whose entire body was covered in filth. The moment he appeared, a nauseating stench was emitted from his body. However, no one present felt nauseous because the murderous aura that surged out from his body made them feel apprehensive and oppressed. When the black man appeared, his body was filled with killing intent. He was extremely cautious. However, after seeing this place clearly, there was a hint of surprise in his only bright eyes on his filthy face. Then he said, "What rich spiritual energy!" Just as everyone was confused, an incredible scene happened in the next moment. With the black man as the center, the spiritual energy in the surroundings started to go berserk. It was like a tornado started to roll. The endless spiritual energy formed a storm and swept towards the black man. However, as the center of the storm, the black man seemed to have turned into a bottomless black hole. All the spiritual energy that gathered was refined by him at the fastest speed. Almost everyone present was in the sky realm. Seeing the speed at which the black man refined the spiritual energy, they all gasped and sighed. 100 meters, 1,000 meters, the storm started to spread. It continued for several miles, dozens of miles. The spiritual energy within dozens of miles was rioting because of the black man turning into tornadoes. The tornadoes approached from afar. The violent spiritual energy could easily tear apart an ordinary Dan-Core realm cultivator. However, the black man stood in the center of the tornadoes. He was motionless like a rock, refining the spiritual energy. Chapter 828. After a quarter of an hour, the black man opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, a golden light was emitted from his body. The golden light penetrated the black man's jet-black blood stains, and a berserk aura emerged. Under the berserk aura and the golden light, the black man's clothes and dirt instantly exploded. The black man was completely naked, but the glaring golden light was like a golden sun. Under the illumination of this intense light, no one could see the black man's perfect body. The black spear in the naked black man's hand also swept away all the dirt after the berserk energy. The originally black and dirty spear turned into a glaring silver light in the next moment. Under the silver light, it was as if there were snakes of lightning swimming on the spear. The glaring gold and silver light was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Many people felt pain in their eyes after looking directly at it, and they subconsciously closed their eyes. The gold and silver light in the air gradually dissipated, and the black man disappeared as well. In his place was a handsome young man wearing a black robe, with a blue belt around his waist and holding an extraordinary silver spear. The handsome young man was naturally Zichin. He held the dragon soul spear and led the barbaric dragon. Without any resources, he fought his way from the first ancient road to the first 7 ancient road, and finally arrived at the first 8 ancient road. Along the way, Zichen could be said to have saved as much energy as possible. He didn't want to waste energy to shake off the dirt on his body and spear. He originally thought that it would be another fierce battle when he arrived at this place, but he didn't expect that there would be an outsider here. Moreover, what made Zichen even more concerned was the unbelievably dense spiritual energy of heaven and earth here. To Zichen, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here was like heaven. Zichen's indifferent gaze swept around, and his gaze fell on the silver world. After discovering that this was a lightning region, Zichen's face was filled with astonishment, but his heart was also filled with joy. Obviously, the heavens were still looking after him and had sent him a trump card. Following his gaze, Zichen discovered a familiar aura. This aura came from his bloodline, from his soul. It made Zichen feel as if he had met a family member. Zichen's illusion came from the hidden golden Lei clan mark between his eyebrows. Zichen's gaze instantly fell on Lei Ming's body, and he saw the Lei clan mark between Lei Ming's eyebrows. He let out a low cry, Lei clan. At this moment, Lei Ming was also sizing up Zichen like the others. However, unlike the others, Lei Ming was looking at the dragon soul spear in Zichen's hand. This dragon soul spear had a fatal attraction to lightning cultivators because of the large amount of thunder crystals and thunder soul crystal. Seeing the lightning mark between Lei Ming's eyebrows, Zichen naturally also saw Lei Ming's pig face. His gaze swept around, and when he saw the Heaven Realm experts on both sides, Zichen guessed that Lei Ming was in trouble. Zichen's expression didn't change. His gaze once again fell on the liquid lightning essence in Lei Ming's hand. After seeing the liquid lightning essence, Zichen's pupils suddenly shrank. He felt a dense lightning energy from the liquid lightning essence, and this lightning energy was actually so pure. In a daze, Zichen felt as if that liquid was even purer than the energy he cultivated. Furthermore, Zichen immediately understood that Lei Ming's trouble must have come from the liquid in his hand. Zichen's figure flashed and landed on the ground. He didn't go forward to help. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and began recovering his energy. The previous 15 minutes of crazy energy absorption only gave Zichen the ability to protect himself. It didn't let him recover his energy to the peak immediately. Hence, at this moment, he didn't have the ability to fight against 6 Heaven Realm experts at the same time. Zichen kept his spear and sat down cross-legged, recovering as if there was no one around. This kind of arrogant action caused the faces of the surrounding cultivators to change. Clearly, Lei Ming's actions were too arrogant. However, there was still a good show to watch, and they didn't have the time to care about Zichen. Although some of them were thinking about Zichen's extraordinary spear, they were extremely wary of the violent killing intent that surged out of Zichen's body. They didn't dare to cause trouble for Zichen. Their gazes moved again and landed on Lei Ming. At this moment, Yan Wu and Du Ji's aggressive gazes had already landed on Lei Ming, waiting for him to make a decision on who to give the liquid lightning essence to. Many cultivators in the distance looked on mockingly. As a member of the Thunder tribe, Lei Ming, who was in the middle stage of the core realm, wasn't weak even though he didn't have any powerful techniques. However, it seemed like he could only fight one against one. When faced with a group of Heaven Realm experts, he could only passively take the beating. In addition, Lei Ming wasn't willing to leave. This made many Heaven Realm experts set their sights on Lei Ming. On one hand, they wanted Lei Ming to go in and find the liquid lightning essence. On the other hand, they wanted to beat Lei Ming up for it. These days, watching Lei Ming get beaten up had become a kind of entertainment for many cultivators. Lei Ming, I still have to find the ancient tribe's battle techniques. I don't have time to waste with you here. Yan Wu's smile became colder. Lei Ming, make a decision quickly. My time is limited too. Beside him, Du Ji also snorted coldly. Lei Ming was extremely helpless. It seemed like he didn't dare to provoke either side. Moreover, he couldn't leave the liquid lightning essence on the ground and let them fight to get it. That way, Lei Ming would be purely looking for trouble and would die even more miserably. Please don't make things difficult for me. Lei Ming finally opened his mouth, but his expression was pleading. We're not making things difficult for you. Yan Wu looked at Lei Ming and smiled. You're from one of the mysterious 4 great ancient clans, the Lightning Clan. How would we dare to make things difficult for you? Du Ji also had a mocking expression. That's right. The 4 great ancient clans have a great reputation. They surpass all the other powers in the continent. Who would dare to make things difficult for you? Aren't we all waiting for you to distribute the liquid lightning essence? You can give it to whoever you want. We definitely won't resist. Just as they were talking, Du Ji's knuckles cracked. The two of you, please don't make things difficult for me. If you want the liquid lightning essence, I'll go in and find it for you. Why don't you discuss who will take it first? When I find another drop, I'll give it to the second person, suggested Lei Ming. Yan Wu and Du Ji exchanged a glance and let out a cold snort. Clearly, there was no room for discussion. Lei Ming was helpless. As a member of the 4 great ancient clans, he knew that the Lightning Clan had already declined. Their situation was extremely bad. Since he was young, he had been determined to make the Lightning Clan rise again. However, only after coming here did he realize that the Lightning Clan wasn't welcomed by others. They were suppressed and schemed against everywhere. He had already walked through 5 or 7 ancient paths, but he hadn't found a single technique of the Lightning Clan. Now that he had reached the 8th path with great difficulty, this was the place where the Lightning Clan's techniques were most likely to appear. Lei Ming wouldn't leave no matter what. He wanted to live. He wanted to obtain the Lightning Clan's techniques. He wanted to bring them back to the Lightning Clan and make them rise again. Under the pressure, Lei Ming had no choice but to make a choice. He gave the only drop of lightning liquid essence in his hand to Yan Wu. The reason he gave it to Yan Wu was because he was a fire tribute Heaven's Path expert. His combat power was great, and his temper was extremely explosive. If he didn't give it to him, Lei Ming was afraid that Yan Wu would kill him out of anger. As for Du Ji, he had been beating him up before, but he hadn't had any intention of killing him. After weighing the pros and cons, Lei Ming decisively made his choice. As expected of a member of the Lightning Clan, this choice is truly wise. Yan Wu laughed loudly as he received the liquid lightning essence. Du Ji's expression immediately became ugly. He shouted furiously, Lei Ming, you're courting death! Hearing this shout, Lei Ming quickly covered his head with both hands. He knew that what was coming next would be a storm of angry beatings. It didn't matter if he hit his face or body, but he couldn't hit his head, because if even a little bit of energy entered his sea of consciousness, it would cause trouble. In the next moment, a storm of attacks fell. Du Ji and the other 2 Heaven's Path experts weren't stingy with their attacks. They continuously attacked to vent their anger. Indeed, they didn't dare to do anything to Yan Wu, but they could vent their anger on Lei Ming. In the distance, Zi-chan was sitting cross-legged and recovering. He frowned slightly. It was reasonable to say that he was also a member of the Lightning Clan. He had obtained the Lightning Clan's inheritance and received the Lightning Clan's kindness. At this moment, seeing Lei Ming being beaten by him made him feel uncomfortable. Furthermore, seeing the Lightning Clan's members being bullied like this made Zi-chan even more uncomfortable. Bang! Lei Ming was sent flying by a kick. He flew for more than 10 meters and was then kicked around like a rubber ball. Yan Wu took the lightning essence and watched the show from the side. He had a mocking expression on his face. Beside him, the others were cheering loudly. Zi-chan, whose yuan qi and strength hadn't fully recovered, was already burning with anger. He was angry at these people's attitude towards the Lightning Clan. He was even more angry at Lei Ming's attitude of not resisting. Suddenly, Lei Ming was sent flying again. However, this time, the kick was off and he flew toward Zi-chan. Lei Ming landed on the ground and rolled a few times. He only stopped when he was about to touch Zi-chan. "Hey, friend, kick him over to me," Du Ji shouted at Zi-chan. Zi-chan's furrowed brows relaxed, and then he opened his eyes and looked at Lei Ming. Lei Ming had his head in his hands, his back facing the crowd. Facing Zi-chan, Zi-chan could clearly see the unwillingness, humiliation, and resentment in his eyes. But more than that, there was a sense of helplessness. Fate seemed to have written a few words in his eyes. "If you want to live, you have to bear it." Zi-chan, who opened his eyes, stood up and walked towards Lei Ming. In the distance, the others were laughing. Du Ji was shouting loudly, indicating for Zi-chan to kick him over. Lei Ming hugged his head with both hands, and his body was trembling. He heard the approaching footsteps and also sensed his fate. In the next moment, he would be sent flying by a merciless kick. However, after waiting for a long time, Lei Ming didn't see the kick. Instead, he saw a strong hand. Zi-chan bent down and grabbed Lei Ming. He then helped him up. Lei Ming's swollen face was obviously stunned. He looked at Zi-chan in disbelief. The others were also stunned by this scene. All of them restrained their expressions and stared blankly ahead. Yan Wu was stunned at first. Then, the mocking expression on his face became even more intense. At the same time, he glanced at Du Ji with a mocking expression. Du Ji's face turned white. It seemed like this was the second time he had been slapped in the face today. "Kid, what do you mean?" "I told you to kick him over. Are you deaf? I told you to kick him, not to help him up." The two sky martial artists who followed Du Ji also shouted loudly. Zi-chan didn't look at Du Ji and the other two. He also ignored them. He looked at Lei Ming in front of him and said seriously, "As a member of the Lei clan, you should have a Lei bone." Chapter 829. Lei Ming stared at Zi-chan in a daze. He was touched, but he did not agree with Zi-chan's words. As a member of the Lightning Clan, he should have the Lightning Bone. However, the Lightning Bone also depended on the time. Without strength, having the Lightning Bone was akin to courting death. Lei Ming was touched when Lin Fan helped him up. However, the touch quickly disappeared and was replaced by indifference. He had encountered such a situation several times in the 5-8 ancient roads. Those who wanted to help him were undoubtedly interested in his special method of finding the lightning liquid essence. However, in the end, no one could protect him in the face of so many experts. In Lei Ming's opinion, this young man who had just arrived should have the same idea as those people. Being slapped in the face, Du Ji walked over with the other two. When he got close, he said to Zi-chan, "Why? Do you want to protect him?" Zi-chan turned his head and looked at Du Ji. He could not help but frown. This person was asking for help, and yet he was so ruthless. How despicable. A cold smile appeared on Du Ji's face. "Don't say that I didn't warn you. There have been at least 8, if not 10, fellows who had set their sights on Lei Ming. But what happened in the end? They either died or ran away. You want to take all the benefits for yourself?" With Zi-chan's intelligence, he quickly connected the dots after hearing a few words. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he asked, I'm very curious, as one of the 4 ancient clans, why is the Thunder Clan being looked down upon like this? Haha. As Zi-Chen's words fell, laughter rang out from the surroundings. For great ancient clans? Stop dreaming. Are you really treating the Lightning Clan as one of the 4 great ancient clans? Are you really stupid? The 4 great ancient roads is just a compliment. There are only 3 great ancient clans in the world. The Lightning Clan has long been eliminated. Amidst the mocking laughter, Zi-Chen finally understood what was going on. The Lightning Clan was originally one of the 4 great ancient clans. However, they have long declined and lost all their techniques. Now, they only have the ability to control lightning, but no technique to control lightning. Lei Ming said. His voice was filled with bitterness and unwillingness. Zi-Chen suddenly felt something and asked, You're not willing to leave because of the Lei clan's technique? Lei Ming nodded and said, That's right. It said that there are ancient race battle techniques here. Many people have gone to look for them. Even if they can't find any thunder race battle techniques, finding 1 or 2 ancient battle techniques is also not bad. Where did you come from? This is none of your business. If you know what's good for you, hurry up and leave. If you want the lightning essence, you'll have to line up. We'll talk after I get it. After being ignored by Zi-Chen again, Duji shouted at Zi-Chen. A cold light flashed in Zi-Chen's eyes as he asked, You're still so arrogant when you're asking for help. Get him to help? Stop dreaming. I didn't kill him because he's still useful. A mere Thunder Clan is already a thing of the past. A Thunder Clan without any combat skills is worse than a pig or a dog here, Duji said with disdain. Is that so? Zi-Chen sneered. He looked at Duji and said, If the Thunder Clan is inferior to pigs and dogs, then what are you? What do you mean? Duji stared coldly at Zi-Chen. Zi-Chen said coldly, Nothing. I just heard you speak rudely and wanted to kill you. Moreover, I used a lightning skill. Lightning skill? You're from the Thunder Clan. Duji's expression changed, but he soon laughed and joked, Haha, so you're from the Thunder Clan of the 4 ancient clans. I'm sorry for not recognizing you. I'm very curious. How strong is your lightning skill? Lei Ming was stunned by Zi-Chen's words. He had never seen him in the Thunder Clan, so he couldn't be from the Thunder Clan. The surrounding people watched the show happily. Duji was a late-stage Primal Core expert. A late-stage Primal Core Hotian warrior was undoubtedly powerful. In a one-on-one battle, he could easily defeat Lei Ming. This was also the main reason why Lei Ming didn't dare to resist. After Zi-Chen finished speaking, he released his Yuan Qi. However, he was only at the mid-stage Primal Core realm. After Duji sensed it, the disdain on his face thickened. Following the release of Yuan Qi, silver snakes surrounded Zi-Chen's body. As expected, you're from the Thunder Clan. Duji said disdainfully, Don't worry, if you lose, I won't kill you. I want you to be like Lei Ming, staying here and being ordered around like a dog. Your only purpose is to find the essence of the lightning liquid. I'm afraid it won't be as you wish. Zi-Chen sneered. Then he looked at Lei Ming and asked, Do you have any mid-grade Yuan liquid? Lei Ming was still in shock when he felt the pure, yet strange power of lightning from Zi-Chen's body. When he heard Zi-Chen's question, he was first stunned, then he nodded subconsciously, Yes. Take 5 drops first. Zi-Chen said. After Zi-Chen's words, the surrounding people burst into laughter. They thought Zi-Chen was very powerful, but they didn't expect him to not even have any Yuan liquid on him. Previously, the crowd was looking forward to a fierce battle. However, Zi-Chen's actions caused their confidence in him to plummet. Without hesitation, Lei Ming took out 5 drops of mid-grade Yuan liquid, then asked, Is it enough? After all, the other party was helping him and was also from the Thunder Clan. Although they were strangers, he would help if he could. Zichen took the drops of yuan liquid and swallowed them in one gulp. A sinister smile appeared on his face as he said, "If it's just killing the three of them, it's enough." As the yuan liquid entered his stomach, Zichen's exhausted yuan qi was instantly restored to its peak. The aura around him became violent, and the extreme yin yuan qi constantly surged, emitting a dazzling silver light. Zichen coldly looked at Du Ji, then swept his gaze over the two men beside him, saying, "It's your fortune to die under the Thunder Clan's techniques. Now come at me together." "Shameless boasting, I can kill you alone," Du Ji angrily shouted, and the earth element energy around him became violent. He was indeed weaker against a fire element cultivator at the same level, but if his opponent was someone else, no one would dare say the earth element was weak. At the same time, the other two people beside Duji also began to accumulate energy. Obviously, although they spoke disdainfully, they were preparing to join forces. This was the rule of the ancient road. As long as they could kill the enemy, there were no rules. "I'll help you." Besides Zichen, Lei Ming's lightning energy also became violent. Zichen shook his head. "No need, merely 3 Hotian realm cultivators. I can kill them." Just as Zichen's words fell, the 3 people in front of him had already launched their attacks. 3 earth and yellow fist lights surged with a terrifying aura, ruthlessly attacking Zichen. This was an earth element technique, and the fist lights were very powerful. Silver light flickered under Zichen's feet, and like a bolt of silver lightning, he began to change, dodging the 3 fist lights in an instant. "So what if you dodge the attack?" "I don't believe you can keep dodging," Du Ji shouted, and then his figure flashed forward, swinging his fist at Zichen. At the same time, the 2 people behind Du Ji also stepped forward. Both of them held long blades in their hands and displayed an extremely powerful earth blade technique among the earth element techniques. Zichen's body turned into a silver light, and like lightning, he dodged the fierce attacks. Such a miraculous footwork caused many people's expressions to change. More than half of them recognized this footwork and exclaimed, "9 passing thunderbolts! This is the 9 passing thunderbolts, known as the world's fastest speed." Seeing Zichen use a technique many times more advanced than his, Lei Ming was completely shocked. It's really the 9 passing thunderbolts, and it's even more advanced. It's at least above the 5 passing thunderbolts. Zichen's footwork had already reached the 6 passing thunderbolts, and his speed was extremely fast. However, in the face of the 3 late-stage Hotian realm cultivators' attacks, Zichen's speed slowly lost its advantage. After dodging the attacks again, Zichen flashed back. "Humph, do you only know how to dodge? What other techniques do you have? Hurry up and use them, or you won't have a chance." Seeing that Zichen only knew how to dodge, Du Ji's face was full of contempt. Zichen coldly said, "As you wish." As soon as he finished speaking, Zichen pointed to the sky and shouted, "Thunder!" As soon as the word was spoken, the sound of rolling thunder came from the heavens, as if heavenly thunder was descending from the 9th heaven. A unique pressure of heavenly thunder descended from the heavens, sweeping across the earth and wreaking havoc. Under this terrifying pressure, everyone's expression changed greatly. When they raised their heads to look at the sky, they discovered that there are suddenly many more thunderbolts in the sky. These thunderbolts were like thunder dragons, faintly discernible in the clouds. The word thunder had summoned heavenly thunder. Such a scene shocked everyone present. At this moment, Zichen was like a thunder god. His eyes were cold as he pointed at the 3 people from the sky and shouted, "Fall!" As soon as the word was spoken, the sound of thunder resounded. Heavenly thunder descended from the heavens towards the 3 people. The rolling thunder resounded, and the heavenly thunder energy wreaked havoc. It was as if this place had become another silver world. This is the thunder summoning technique. It's really the Thunder Clan's technique. Seeing so many heavenly thunder descending in front of him, Lei Ming was so excited that he could not speak. This technique had long been lost in the Thunder Clan, but there were records in ancient books. The thunder summoning technique could summon heavenly thunder with just one word. This thunder summoning technique shocked everyone. However, it was obviously unrealistic to rely on this to kill the 3 earth elemental heaven martial artists who were known for their defense. When the thunderbolts in the sky dissipated, the 3 people appeared. Black smoke rose from their heads, and many parts of their bodies were charred black. They looked extremely miserable. Earth elemental heaven martial artists had super strong defense, but this was just an appearance. In fact, the 3 of them had only suffered superficial injuries, which did not affect their combat power. As soon as the heavenly thunder dissipated, the 3 of them rushed towards Zichen. Zichen stood in the same place, neither retreating nor advancing. He began to form a seal with his hands. It was still the Thunder Clan seal, Thunder Finger. As the cold words fell, the void above Zichen's head suddenly split open. Dazzling silver light filled the sky again, and a huge fingerprint fell from the sky. The fingerprint was abnormally thick and emitted endless silver light. There seemed to be thunder runes jumping on the surface of its body, and there were thunder snakes swimming around it. With a terrifying aura, it attacked the 3 people. The other party used such a powerful Thunder Clan technique, which made the 3 people's expressions change drastically. After looking at each other, the 3 of them began to form seals to defend. The thunder fingerprint exploded with a loud bang, and the terrifying energy it contained exploded, wreaking havoc. This attack was blocked by the 3 people working together. At this moment, the 3 people's eyes were filled with shock. At the same time, they were extremely glad that they had worked together. If they had fought alone, they would have been seriously injured, if not dead. This is the Thunder Clan's technique. It's just S.O. Du Ji wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said coldly. A cold smile appeared on Zichen's face. He said, I just showed you the Thunder Clan's technique. Now, I will show you the real killing technique. Zichen's back suddenly emitted rays of silver light. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a pair of silver thunderbone wings appeared on Zichen's back. Chapter 830. The moment the heavenly thunder wings appeared on his back, Zichen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Just like what he said, he was only showing them the power of the Thunder Clan's techniques, not a killing technique that allowed him to fight 3 people above his level. Feeling the killing intent coming from Zichen, as well as the sudden appearance of the lightning wings on his back, the trio's expressions changed drastically. They felt a dangerous aura coming from Zichen's body, so they immediately switched from attacking to defending. They were heaven martial artists. When facing the weak Dan primordial realm cultivators, they could kill them with pure elemental energy. However, if they were to face someone of the same level, their only advantage would be their strong defense. Thunder Strike. The thunder summoning technique appeared again, and more heavenly thunder fell from the sky. The blue sky suddenly turned silver, as if a thunder dragon was raging, and the thunder energy was violent. The 3 of them worked together to form an indestructible defense to defend against the heavenly thunder. The heavenly thunder wings on Zichen's back shook, and he shot forward. This was the first time he initiated a close-range attack since the beginning. The crowd only saw a flash of silver light, and Zichen's figure was already gone. His speed was faster than lightning. The rumbling of thunder continued, and the heavenly thunder energy surged wildly. The ground shook, and even the silver world in the distance seemed to be in a frenzy. This change lasted for 10 breaths. After 10 breaths, the rumbling of thunder dissipated, and so did the violent heavenly thunder energy. When all the heavenly thunder energy dissipated, the world returned to normal, and the crowd looked at the scene. The 3 earth elemental heaven martial artists stood motionless. The perfect defense formed by the 3 of them had been torn apart, and Zichen was standing in the middle of the 3 of them. The heavenly thunder wings on his back disappeared, and the dragon soul spear in his hand trembled slightly. Bright red blood flowed down the body of the spear to the tip and then dripped down. The crowd was shocked because the vitality of Duji and the other two had completely disappeared. Although the three of them were still standing, they were already dead. Within 10 breaths, Zichen killed 3 people above his level. Everyone was shocked by Zichen's powerful combat ability. In the distance, the mocking look on Yan Wu's face had long disappeared. He looked at Zichen, his eyes filled with fear. To be able to kill the enemy within 10 breaths, the opponent's battle prowess had already surpassed that of a normal Empyrean martial artist. Lei Ming was equally shocked. However, after the initial shock, his face was filled with excitement. Today, not only had he witnessed many of the Thunder Tribe's battle skills, he had also seen the legendary supreme treasure of the Thunder Tribe, the Heavenly Thunder Wings. Zichen put away his spear and turned around. As he walked past Du Ji and the other two, their bodies suddenly exploded. The 3 of them exploded, and their inner cores and spirit rings flew towards Zichen. Zichen quickly took out a spirit ring and recognized it as its owner. He then opened it and took out a few drops of mid-grade essence liquid, which he immediately swallowed. By the time Zichen walked in front of Lei Ming, the elemental energy that he had just expended had already completely recovered. Lei Ming stared blankly at the approaching Zichen. His eyes were filled with excitement and tears. "Come with me." Zichen glanced at Lei Ming, not understanding why he was so agitated. After speaking coldly, Zichen turned and walked towards Yan Wu. Lei Ming followed behind Zichen mechanically, but his heart was beating like a drum. Clearly, he had already guessed what the other party was going to do next. As expected, just as Yan Wu's expression became uglier and uglier, Zichen walked in front of him. He stretched out his hand and looked at Zichen coldly. Yan Wu's face began to twist, and his expression kept changing. Zichen said coldly, "Give it to me." Anger rose in Yan Wu's heart. Beside him, the 2 Empyrean martial artists' gazes also became unfriendly. "Give it to me," Zichen shouted again. Domineering, truly domineering. At this moment, Zichen gave off an extremely domineering aura. After killing 3 Empyrean martial artists, he was now going to find trouble with the other 3. Behind Zichen, Lei Ming was also influenced by this domineering aura. Endless pride rose in his heart. The Thunder Clan should have a Thunderbone. The Thunder Clan should be like this. Yan Wu's expression became uglier and uglier. The humiliation and anger in his heart had already reached its peak. However, under the other party's aggressive gaze, Yan Wu could not summon any fighting spirit in his heart. He could only grit his teeth and say unwillingly, "You can't protect him. Not only him, you can't even protect yourself. When they come back with the ancient technique, it will be the time of your death." Facing Zichen, Yan Wu could not summon any fighting spirit in his heart. At this moment, he could only leave behind some harsh words. According to his own script, the other party would ignore him and then coldly shout, "Give it to me." Then he would unwillingly hand over the thunder essence. Yan Wu's idea was good. Although he would also lose face, at least he would say some harsh words and save some face. However, it seemed that the other party's temper was not good. Moreover, he did not follow his script. After Yan Wu's harsh words, a hint of impatience appeared on the other party's cold face. Then he suddenly withdrew his outstretched hand and clenched it into a fist. Then he punched out. With a punch, golden light flashed and surging power surged. This was a strike made with pure strength, and it was also an offensive skill unique to perfect bodies. The 2 parties were very close, and Yan Wu had been wary of the other party's sudden attack. Just as Zichen suddenly threw out a punch, a defensive light barrier appeared around Yan Wu's body. At the same time, he exerted strength in his feet and flashed backward, shouting, "How dare you!" Before Yan Wu could say the word sneak attack, the defensive light barrier he had erected shattered. At the same time, the golden fist beam hit Yan Wu's chest. The crisp sound of bones shattering rang out continuously. Yan Wu's chest instantly collapsed. At the same time, the surging power in the fist beam entered the other party's body. This power surged up his sea of consciousness and down to abdomen, constantly wreaking havoc. Uffed! Yan Wu, who was sent flying, coughed out a mouthful of blood. His eyes bulged as though they were about to fall out. After flying 100 meters, Yan Wu's body landed heavily. After landing, Yan Wu coughed out blood again. At the same time, he used one hand to support himself on the ground and pointed at Zichen with his other hand. His mouth squirmed. You didn't follow the routine." Before he could finish his sentence, Yan Wu died before he could even catch his breath. Yan Wu was killed with a single punch. Everyone was shocked and petrified. Previously, Zichen had killed Du Ji and the other two with lightning speed. He had relied on his speed and sharp weapons, which had only made everyone wary. However, now that he had easily killed Yan Wu with a single punch, his battle prowess was already terrifying. With Yan Wu dead, Zichen slowly walked towards him. As he approached, Yan Wu's body exploded. The spirit ring and essence core flew towards Zichen. Zichen had only delivered a punch of strength, so he didn't need to consume any essence liquid. After putting away the two items, he walked back again. Zichen walked towards Lei Ming. He had already taken out the thunder liquid essence from the spirit ring. Here, walking to Lei Ming's side, Zichen handed the thunder liquid essence to Lei Ming. Lei Ming was still in shock. Seeing the thunder liquid essence, he quickly shook his head and said, This is what you got. It should be yours. I need it. I will find it myself." "Take it and refine it," Zichen said firmly. Zichen's sharp gaze made Lei Ming not dare to refuse again. He quickly took it. This thunder liquid essence was very useful to Lei Ming. Just as Zichen said, he could control lightning. As long as he entered the silver world, he would be able to obtain the thunder liquid essence. After handing the thunder liquid essence to Lei Ming, Zichen turned and looked coldly at the two heaven martial artists following Yan Wu. Yan Wu was easily killed. The two of them were afraid that they would end up like Yan Wu. They stayed where they were and didn't dare to escape immediately. At this moment, seeing Zichen's cold gaze sweeping towards them, the two of them trembled. Their fear had reached its limit. Zichen stretched out his hand towards the two of them and said coldly, "Give it to me." The two of them looked at each other and saw the fear and confusion in each other's eyes. One of them said in a trembling voice, No, give it to me," Zichen shouted again. The fear in the two of them grew. It seemed that Yan Wu was killed with one punch after these two shouts. The two of them were about to cry. One of them said sadly, "Lord, we really don't have it. We really don't have the thunder liquid essence. We swear to the heavens." The other person also looked at Lei Ming and said anxiously, "Lei Ming, brother Lei Ming, quickly tell Lord whether you gave us the thunder liquid essence or not." Looking at the two of them, Zichen smiled and said coldly, "Give me the spirit ring." The two of them were completely dumbfounded. So he didn't want the thunder liquid essence. He wanted to rob them. An expert who could kill Yan Wu with one punch was actually robbing the two of them. This made the two of them feel a strong sense of disbelief. However, seeing the other party clench his fist again, the two of them didn't dare to talk nonsense. They quickly took off the spirit ring and removed the ownership. They respectfully handed it to Zichen. After taking the spirit ring, Zichen's cold expression softened a little. He asked, "How many ancient roads do you have?" 58. "Lord, these are our 58 ancient roads. It's not just us, the others are the same. They are all 58 ancient roads." Zichen asked slowly. The two of them hurriedly answered. In order to please him, they also said a few more words. What they didn't know was that when they finished speaking, a playful smile appeared on Zichen's face. 58 ancient roads. After leaving this place, they would arrive at the 59 ancient roads. That was the first gathering place of the human race. There were many resources that could be exchanged. Since they could exchange for resources immediately, these people's resources wouldn't be of much use. Zichen nodded. A rare smile appeared on his face. After scanning the spirit ring with his spiritual sense and taking all the resources, Zichen threw the spirit ring back to the two of them. There's still some materials inside. You can exchange them at the 59 ancient roads. The two of them originally thought that the other party would take everything, but who would have thought that Zichen would only take the resources and leave the materials behind? The two of them instantly showed joy on their faces. They quickly nodded and thanked him. Zichen ignored the two of them. He turned around again and walked toward the crowd in the distance. There were more than 20 trial takers there. All of them were shocked by Zichen's combat strength. 58 ancient roads, right? Zichen sneered. He stopped when he was about 10 meters away from the crowd. Just as the crowd was confused, Zichen stretched out 2 fingers and said, "There are 2 paths. One is to die and the other is to live. However, you have to hand over all your resources in exchange for your life." Chapter 831. Hearing Zichen's 2 choices, more than 20 challengers were dumbfounded. Obviously, he was not satisfied with robbing 2 people and wanted to rob them again. In the distance, Lei Ming, who had just put away the thunder liquid essence, staggered and almost fell when he heard Zichen's words. One person actually stood in front of more than 20 strong challengers and openly robbed them. Was this confidence or overconfidence? The 20 challengers looked at each other and then turned to look at Zichen again. Their faces were still filled with disbelief. One of them even asked, "What did you just say? We didn't hear it clearly. Could you please repeat it?" Zichen stood in place, his expression unchanged. He repeated, "2 choices. One is to live and the other is to die. If you want to die, pretend I didn't say anything. If you want to live, take out all the resources you have." This time, everyone heard him clearly and knew that he was serious. However, did he have the strength to do so? A sky martial artist stood out and said coldly, "You're just one person and you dare to have ideas about us. Do you really think you can defeat us?" Just as the sky martial artist finished speaking, the other elixir realm cultivators took out their elixir weapons and stared at Zichen with hostility. Obviously, they were going to fight Zichen to the end for resources. Moreover, there were more than 20 of them and only one of them. In terms of numbers, they had the upper hand. Seeing everyone's reaction, a cold smile appeared on Zichen's face as he took a few steps back. Seeing Zichen take a step back, the sky martial artist who walked out thought that he was afraid and shouted, "Now you want to retreat? You know fear, but it's too late. You'll pay the price for your shameless words. Hand over your spirit ring and spear now, or you'll be killed without mercy." Behind the sky martial artist, the other challengers held their elixir weapons and jeered. Zichen still had a cold smile on his face. He was still retreating, but as he retreated, he said coldly to the empty air, "If anyone resists, kill without mercy." There was no one around Zichen, and no one knew who he was talking to. But as soon as he finished speaking, Zichen suddenly turned around, leaving his back to the crowd. Just as everyone was wondering what was going on, they suddenly saw that something had fallen from the spot where Zichen had left. It was the green belt that was originally tied around his waist. The green belt hovered in the air and didn't fall to the ground. Everyone looked closely and realized that this wasn't a green belt, but a small beast emitting a green light. This little beast was somewhat similar to a snake. They were both mollusks, but before anyone could reveal a surprised expression, a heaven-shaking dragon's roar came out from the little beast's mouth. The loud and clear dragon's roar shook everyone's ears. Under their shocked expressions, the green light on the little beast's body became even more resplendent. Then the little beast turned into a big beast in the blink of an eye. The large beast exuded an aura that made one's heart palpitate. Its ferocious and dignified head was actually a dragon's head. After seeing the appearance of the large beast, everyone's mind was in extreme shock. Dragon, the beast actually transformed into a dragon, the legendary azure dragon totem. After the barbaric dragon appeared, they finally understood who Ziqin had been talking to. The enlarged barbaric dragon's body was over 10 meters long. Its body surged with the power of the peak of the 8th level. As soon as it appeared, it turned into a green light and flew toward the heaven-level cultivator at the front. Its sharp dragon claws also arrived and ruthlessly swatted at the heaven-level cultivator. The heaven-level cultivator's face was already filled with shock. When he saw the barbaric dragon flying over, he hurriedly used his pill weapon to block. With a resounding clang, the pill weapon in his hand was struck by the dragon's claws. Then, with a cracking sound, cracks appeared on the pill weapon. In the next instant, the pill weapon exploded, but the dragon's claws didn't stop. They directly slapped down on the heaven-level cultivator's head. Pum! A powerful force surged, and the powerful Heaven State Warrior was hit just like that. His head exploded like a watermelon, and his powerful spiritual sense was also wiped out in an instant. A powerful heaven-level cultivator was easily killed by an 8th-level barbaric dragon's attack. The barbaric dragon's attack had killed a heaven-level cultivator. During this time, there were already many trial takers who attacked. Many pill weapons and energy attacks smashed onto the barbaric dragon's body. Sparks flew everywhere. Clanging sounds rang out unceasingly. There were many people who didn't manage to break through the dragon's defense. As for those who were barely able to break through the dragon's defense, they were only able to injure it a little. This level of attack couldn't compare to the existence on the path of trial takers. The barbaric dragon's eyes clearly had a trace of disdain. Then it opened its mouth and let out a joyful dragon roar. Next, the barbaric dragon swung its tail. As the dragon's tail flickered, an ear-piercing sound rang out in the air. Such power caused everyone's expression to change. They hurriedly dodged, but there was still one trial taker who was unlucky enough to be hit by the dragon's tail and killed. A peak 8th level barbaric dragon's battle strength was inconceivable. Adding on the fact that everyone was in awe of the totem, it caused the battle to end prematurely. After 4 of the 20 people died, the battle ended. A group of trial takers was shouting loudly. They wanted to decisively hand over the resources. Ziqin was standing in the distance, calmly looking at the silver world. Only when he heard the cries of the trial takers did he turn around. I told you to hand it over earlier, but you didn't. You clearly know that I don't like to kill people, but you still wanted to test my bottom line. Sai, why bother? Ziqin sighed. He didn't like to kill people, but he still killed 4 of them. He even allowed his pet to kill another 4. If he liked to kill people, wouldn't he have slaughtered everyone? The trial takers were extremely terrified. They all came forward and handed over one spirit ring after another to Ziqin. To them, this was the 5th 8 ancient path. The next path was the first human gathering place. The resources on them were dispensable. But to Ziqin, this was merely the 4th 8 ancient path. There were still a full 10 ancient paths to the first gathering place. Among the 3rd 9 ancient path, there were no resources. Ziqin also didn't have extravagant hopes for the 4th 9 ancient path. It wasn't easy to find traces of humans here, so Ziqin wouldn't let them go no matter what. Of course, there was no need to kill people, but he definitely had to get the resources. Ziqin took a spirit ring. After recognizing it as its owner, he released his spiritual sense. He couldn't help but frown and say, I only want resources, not materials. Leave the materials and hand over all the resources. But don't try to fool me. After taking away all the resources, Ziqin threw the spirit ring to the other party. Right now, he didn't need materials at all. What he urgently needed was resources. After that, the others obediently came forward and took out all the resources they had. In a situation where their lives were in danger, no one dared to cheat. They were afraid that the other party would suddenly check and harm them. Moreover, Zichen didn't want materials. This was equivalent to leaving them a way out. They didn't need to risk their lives for some resources. Along the way, they had used up a lot of resources. Therefore, each of them didn't have many resources on them. Everyone obediently handed over the resources. As for those who died, their spirit rings and Yuan Dan fell into Zichen's hands. The dragon once again turned into a silver belt and wrapped around Zichen's waist, using an azure dragon as a pet. Everyone looked at Zichen with even more fear. As for the two sky martial artists who followed Yanwu, they were even more glad that they were wise and didn't dare to resist. After robbing once, the people who had no resources and didn't dare to take revenge could only obediently leave. For a moment, other than the corpses, only Zichen and Lei Ming were left. Lei Ming looked at Zichen and couldn't hide the excitement on his face. "You really are from the Thunder Clan. What do you think?" Zichen smiled faintly. Lei Ming said, seriously, being able to control lightning, "You are indeed from the Thunder Clan. But why have I never seen you before? I also can't sense your Thunder Clan mark." "I grew up in the Thunder Clan outside." Zichen smiled. Then, a lightning mark appeared between his eyebrows. Seeing the lightning mark between Zichen's eyebrows, Lei Ming exclaimed, "Lightning mark, you are indeed from the Thunder Clan. But why is your mark golden?" Zichen didn't explain further. Why was his Thunder Clan mark golden? It seemed to have something to do with the perfect body and also seemed to have something to do with extreme yang. However, Zichen couldn't explain it clearly. Zichen didn't ask anything about the Thunder Clan. At this moment, he was extremely curious about the Silver World. This was because this Silver World was very similar to the Thunder territory in the Barbarian land. There is lightning essence inside. Zichen looked at the Silver World and suddenly said. Lei Ming nodded and said, "That's right. There is indeed lightning essence inside. However, if you want to obtain it, you have to go deeper. The possibility of obtaining it outside is very small." Zichen didn't ask further. He was prepared to enter personally to take a look. However, before that, a golden light spot condensed in his hand. This is the first 6 of the 9 passing thunderbolts. It is also the limit of my knowledge. You can comprehend it yourself first. The golden light spot in Zichen's hand flew out. Under Lei Ming's excited expression, the light spot entered between his eyebrows. Lei Ming closed his eyes and quietly comprehended the 9 passing thunderbolts. This was a super powerful technique of the Thunder Clan. It was known as the fastest in the world. However, it had been lost in the Thunder Clan. At this moment, there were only 1 to 3 passing thunderbolts in the Thunder Clan. After quietly comprehending it, Lei Ming realized the mystery of the 9 passing thunderbolts. However, if combined with the heavenly thunder wings, this footwork technique would be even more mysterious. When Lei Ming opened his eyes and wanted to express his gratitude, he saw that Zichen had already turned around and was walking towards the Silver World. "My name is Lei Ming. May I know your name?" Lei Ming asked. The other party had saved him and taught him the Thunder Clan's techniques. However, he didn't know his benefactor's name. Zichen. Zichen walked into the Silver World. Zichen, Lei Zichen? What a strange name. Lei Ming frowned slightly. There was no one else here. Lei Ming could freely comprehend the 9 passing thunderbolts. While comprehending, Lei Ming also planned to refine the lightning essence. All these years he had lived like a grandson. He had discovered more than 10 drops of lightning essence, but he had never refined a single drop. The lightning essence also had a fatal attraction to him. However, he could only helplessly watch as it was taken away. Now he finally had a drop of lightning essence that belonged to him. This kind of thing was a treasure even for Sky Realm experts, not to mention the Thunder Clan. To the Thunder Clan, this thing was like a lightning crystal. It was a natural treasure with a fatal attraction. Chapter 832. The Silver World was filled with thunder and lightning. Endless thunderbolts wreaked havoc everywhere. The power of these thunderbolts was comparable to the thunderbolts in the 8th level of the lightning territory. As soon as Zichen entered, the golden mark on his forehead started to flicker, shielding him from the raging thunderbolts. As he went deeper, Zichen felt even stronger thunderbolts. These thunderbolts had the power to destroy a person in the primordial realm. They could be used as a trump card. However, just as Zichen was about to use the purple gold gourd to collect them, he realized that these thunderbolts couldn't be absorbed by the gourd. These thunderbolts seemed to have a life of their own. When the hallucinatory light fell, they would quickly avoid it. Zichen used the purple gold gourd several times, but he couldn't see a single thunderbolt. A strange expression appeared on Zichen's face. After a few fruitless attempts, he put away the purple gold gourd. It seemed that this place was different from the lightning territory. The golden mark on his forehead formed a defensive light shield. Zichen continued to advance without any pressure. He soon surpassed the limit of the thunderbolts. Moreover, it was extremely easy for him. After a while, Zichen found the essence of the lightning liquid. It was like raindrops in the sky, quietly floating in the raging sea of thunder. This scene was so familiar. However, what Zichen saw before were floating thunder crystals. These were the essence of the lightning liquid. Zichen stepped forward and successfully collected the essence of the lightning liquid. Within the essence of the lightning liquid, Zichen felt a pure thunderbolt energy. It seemed to be even purer than the pure yuan energy in his body. In this sea of thunder, there was no one to disturb him. It could be said that this was a good place to quietly refine the essence of the lightning liquid. Thus, Zichen sat there cross-legged to refine the lightning liquid essence. The energy contained in a single drop of lightning liquid essence was extremely powerful. Apart from being powerful, this energy was even purer. Its effect on yuan energy was similar to the effect of the fruit of strength on physical strength. It wasn't just an increase in yuan energy. It was more of a suppression, a qualitative change. Just like how the fruit of strength had no effect on elemental energy, the lightning liquid essence had no effect on one's physical strength. It could only alter one's elemental energy. Zichen's elemental energy was already extremely pure. After refining the liquid lightning essence, although there were some changes, the changes were not big. This did not mean that Zichen's elemental energy was pure without any impurities, but that the amount of liquid lightning essence he refined was too little. Moreover, Zichen discovered that not only could the lightning liquid essence compress and change his elemental energy, its effects were actually similar to the strength fruits. It could actually restore his elemental energy. Of course, this was because Zichen's elemental energy belonged to the lightning element. If it were any other cultivator, they would not have been able to recover. After discovering the wondrous use of the lightning liquid, Zichen naturally needed more of it. Just as Zichen opened his eyes after refining a drop of lightning liquid, he discovered that a drop of lightning liquid essence was actually flying in his direction. It seemed that it was going to fly to the outside world. Zichen extended his hand and caught the drop of thunder liquid essence. This thunder liquid essence, which should have reached the periphery, was blocked by Zichen. After that, Zichen continued to refine it. Time began to repeat here. To Zichen, this was nothing. It was just a little monotonous. However, to those in the outside world who were bitterly waiting for the lightning liquid essence, this fruitless day was simply a kind of torture. Not only did they not gain anything, but what made them even more speechless was that Lei Ming from the Lightning Clan also did not gain anything during these days. Those in the know had some vague guesses in their hearts, but they did not dare to be sure. Lei Ming was also the same. However, Zichen did not appear, and Lei Ming did not have the strength to enter the depths, so naturally he could not ask. After refining 10 drops of lightning liquid essence, Zichen stood up. After getting up, he did not leave, but instead continued to go deeper. The 10 drops of lightning liquid essence allowed Zi Chen's elemental energy to rise by a small level. His already excellent elemental energy was also of a higher quality. Moreover, after refining 10 drops of lightning liquid essence, Zi Chen did not feel that he had reached a bottleneck. Therefore, he needed more lightning liquid essence to make his elemental energy purer. While continuously refining, Zi Chen had a feeling that if he continued to refine the lightning liquid, then his elemental energy would be like his physical strength, reaching a perfect level one day. Therefore, Zi Chen began to go deeper, searching for more lightning liquid essence. After advancing for 100 meters, the lightning force became stronger. Zi Chen could still withstand it, but the Torvosaurus could not. Therefore, Zi Chen could only return. After returning for a few hundred meters, Zi Chen signaled the Torvosaurus to stay here, and he continued to go deeper. The Torvosaurus's physical strength was at the peak of level 8. Naturally, he could withstand the lightning force here. Moreover, there was a green glow of elemental energy around his body. This green glow belonged to an extremely mysterious energy that could block out the lightning. The Torvosaurus was sleeping here. To him, sleeping was the only shortcut for his body to transform and increase his strength. After going deeper, Zi Chen once again discovered lightning liquid essence. As he went deeper, the amount of lightning liquid essence increased. To others, it was extremely difficult to obtain lightning liquid essence, but Zi Chen could easily obtain it. Moreover, he did not feel any pressure. When Zi Chen reached the limit, he had already obtained more than 20 drops of lightning liquid essence. 20 drops of lightning liquid essence was enough for Zi Chen to refine for a long period of time. Zi Chen returned to the Torvosaurus' side. When he was preparing to continue refining, he suddenly felt the fluctuation of a lightning imprint. In this place, other than him, only Lei Ming had a lightning imprint. Outside the Silver World, Lei Ming was using his extreme speed movement skill to dodge. Although his speed was fast enough, like silver lightning, there were traces to follow. Around Lei Ming stood a few young men. They stared at Lei Ming with mocking gazes. A feminine-looking man shouted at Lei Ming, "Run, hurry up and run. If you dare to slow down by even a bit, I will break one of your legs." Lei Ming didn't dare be negligent. He continued using his movement skill, but the path he took was the center of the group. Rather than saying he was escaping, it was better to say he was being toyed with like a monkey. This kind of situation had happened a month ago. At that time, Zi Chen had used his extreme strength to intimidate and snatch away everyone's resources. They were unable to do anything to Zi Chen and could only resentfully leave. Now, only Lei Ming and Zi Chen were left. So during this time, Lei Ming had begun to practice the 9 lightning deaths. After a month, he had improved quite a bit. Normally, Lei Ming would enter the Silver World to try his luck and see if he could find any lightning liquid essence. But his luck seemed to have run out in the past few years. In this month, he hadn't found a single drop. Those trial takers who had come later also hadn't found anything. But today, when Lei Ming walked out of the Silver World without any gains, he suddenly noticed there were a few more people here. These people were looking at him with unkind eyes. Coincidentally, Lei Ming also recognized a few of them. Among them were the 2 sky martial artists who had followed Yan Wu last time, as well as the one who had bullied him before. In addition, as Lei Ming's eyes moved, his pupils suddenly shrank. This was because he actually saw an even stronger existence in the crowd. Tang Yin. It was said that this person's strength was close to that of a Xiantian martial artist. Moreover, during the trial, he had once killed a human origin martial artist. His battle strength was extremely terrifying. These people appeared at the same time, and their expressions were extremely unkind. Lei Ming sensed that something was wrong. The other party had obviously suffered a loss before, and now they had brought experts to get back their face. Lei Ming immediately wanted to escape. So, Lei Ming displayed his extremely fast movement skill in front of the group of late primal core martial artists. It had to be said that the 9 lightning deaths was indeed very fast. It was so fast that it was unbelievable. Lei Ming successfully escaped while everyone was stunned. But unfortunately, Lei Ming, who had successfully escaped, didn't escape into the silver world. Instead, he ran into the distance. This led to him, who was not proficient in using the 9 lightning deaths, being caught in a short time. And after Lei Ming was caught, he was beaten up violently like raindrops. After that, they made Lei Ming use his movement skill to run in circles. This move was obviously to play with Lei Ming like a monkey. If Lei Ming didn't cooperate, or if he was slightly slower, he would naturally be beaten up again. The beating was inevitable, but they didn't kill him. This was not because they were soft-hearted, but because they still had a use for Lei Ming. "Sir, are we just going to wait outside?" In the distance, a fire element sky martial artist asked in a low voice. Next to him stood a young man. The young man was wearing a fiery red battle armor. He was extraordinarily handsome. Even standing in the group of sky martial artists, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens. The other party was Tang Yin, who was said to be very close to that of a Xiantian martial artist. He also came out from the first ancient road, and his true battle strength was very close to that of a Xiantian martial artist. He was also a fire element sky martial artist. When he heard that Yen Wu was killed by a Thunder Clan trial taker with the Azure Dragon Totem, he specially came to ask for an explanation. Tang Yin glanced indifferently at the cultivator next to him and said, "What else can we do but wait? Are you going to go in and ask him to come out?" The fire element cultivator was embarrassed and said, "I don't dare. I heard that guy is very strong and his control of thunder is very good. These days, there hasn't been any thunder essence in the outer area. It seems to have a lot to do with him. To be able to kill Yen Wu in one blow and have an Azure Dragon, how can he be an ordinary person? Such a thunder cultivator must have obtained more thunder essence." Tang Yin's voice was still indifferent. Outside the silver world, Lei Ming, who had used up a lot of energy, was beaten up again because his speed was greatly reduced. Lei Ming wanted to resist, but the other party had more people and they were stronger than Yen Wu. He didn't have the ability to resist at all. He also wanted to be like Ziqin, who had a thunderbone, but he didn't have any battle strength. Having a thunderbone was purely courting death. Lei Ming fell to the ground and was continuously stepped on. These people had no scruples and directly stepped on Lei Ming's head. This caused the Thunder Clan mark between his eyebrows to fluctuate, and Ziqin sensed it. When Ziqin walked out of the silver world and saw this scene, he immediately frowned. Before Ziqin could do anything, the Torvosaurus had already turned into a silver light and rushed over. He didn't transform, and just used his small body to send everyone flying in a few blows. Chapter 833. The Torvosaurus attacked, and after a few flashes of green light, there was no one around Lei Ming. These people were only swept away and were not injured. After seeing the mini version of the Torvosaurus, their eyes lit up. The petite version of the Torvosaurus could definitely kill both men and women. It looked imposing yet cute. At the same time, it was a good helper with good fighting strength. Ziqin went forward and helped Lei Ming up. The latter looked at Ziqin, his face full of shame. It seemed that he had been beaten again. After helping Lei Ming up, Ziqin patted the dust off his body and pointed to the silver world, saying, "Go there and cultivate. If I don't call you, don't come out." "But you," before Lei Ming could finish, he was interrupted by Ziqin. Lei Ming wanted to remind Ziqin that there was a super strong guy here, but Ziqin did not give him a chance to speak. Pong! Ziqin kicked out, and Lei Ming was sent flying into the silver world until his figure disappeared. A smile appeared on Ziqin's face. "No wonder everyone is beating you up. It feels so good." While they were chatting, Ziqin flicked his hand and threw 2 drops of thunder liquid essence into it. The others were confused by Ziqin's actions. Previously, he had sent them flying with a kick, and now he had given them 2 drops of thunder liquid essence. Only a few of the challengers could guess Zi Chen's intentions. Zi Chen turned his head and looked at the people who were swept away. The smile on his face gradually disappeared and turned into coldness. The Torvosaurus turned into a green light and floated in the air under Zi Chen's lead. There are 2 paths. One leads to life, and the other leads to death. As for the difference between life and death, I don't need to explain. You should know. Zi Chen's cold eyes swept past the 2 sky martial artists. These were the 2 who followed Yanwu. His voice grew colder. The 2 of you have no more resources left. Leave quickly and you can still live. Under Zi Chen's cold stare, the 2's expressions changed. After a moment of hesitation, they retreated, but didn't leave. Just retreating was enough to show their stance. Before they came, they had been worried that Tang Yin wouldn't be a match for the other party. Although he had not fought with Zi Chen before, the emperor had heard of some of the things that Zi Chen had done. He had killed Yanwu in 1 strike, and he had threatened more than 20 experts with 1 dragon. They were only slightly stronger than Yanwu, and they would be killed in 2 strikes at most. Now that they were facing Zi Chen's threat, they did not have any confidence, and their expressions became uglier. 2 paths, 1 to live, 1 to die. Interesting, interesting. Tang Yin gently clapped his hands as he walked over from afar. He stared coldly at Zi Chen and said, I wonder if your Thunder Clan members know that you're so arrogant. I wonder who gave you the right to be so arrogant. I wonder if you'll die early. Tang Yin walked over step by step with a calm and confident smile on his face. This confidence made the others feel slightly relieved. Zi Chen looked at Tang Yin. As soon as he walked out of the Silver World, he noticed this guy who stood out from the crowd. He didn't even need to think to know that everything was caused by this guy. They dared to come back. It should be you who instigated them, right? Zi Chen glanced at Tang Yin and said coldly, That's right. I'm here to seek justice for Yanwu. I'll also give you 2 paths, 1 to live, 1 to die. There's no need to talk about the path of death. The path of life is to hand over your pet and your spear. Tang Yin's words were still indifferent. Zi Chen laughed when he heard this. It seems that you're even more arrogant than me, and you're even better at courting death. But you seem to be mistaken. I gave them 2 paths, but I didn't plan to give you 2 paths. For a guy like you who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and is purely courting death, there's only one path that suits you, and that's the path of death. Zi Chen's voice grew colder and colder. Just as he said the word path of death, he had already rushed towards Tang Yin. As his body rushed forward, a golden light flashed on Zi Chen's body. He then clenched his fist and punched out. As he punched out, the dazzling golden light became even more dazzling. There was an ear-piercing shriek in the air as the golden fist arrived. Zi Chen's sudden attack made Tang Yin's indifferent face a little stunned, but soon he sneered. Raging flames rose on his body. Feeling the power of the opponent's punch, he didn't dare to use his body to block it. As the fist rushed forward, Tang Yin's hands began to form seals. As the seals fell, a huge fire seal appeared in front of him. Boom! The fist collided with the fire seal, erupting with destructive energy fluctuations. Under this energy, the people not far away retreated. Their faces were also filled with astonishment. They were all dissatisfied with Zi Chen's sudden attack. As the energy surged, the fist and the fire seal dissipated. Zi Chen's body only shook slightly, but Tang Yin was forced back several steps. What a strong power! Tang Yin's eyes had a strange look. In the next moment, Zi Chen's body flashed again. Thunder and lightning appeared under his feet. His body gathered strength again, and he punched out again. Fire seal! Tang Yin shouted. His hands quickly formed seals, and an even bigger fire seal appeared. Tang Yin's body was burning with flames. These flames were the origin energy in his body. It was almost as pure as a Xian Tian realm warrior. As a late-stage primordial core realm warrior, Tang Yan's combat power was naturally not weak. In another collision, the golden fist light that could kill a Xiantian realm warrior in one punch only forced Tang Yan back a dozen steps. While Zichen was extremely dissatisfied with his combat power, Tang Yan's heart was filled with shock. He didn't expect his opponent's combat power to be so strong, and from the beginning to the end, his opponent had only used his physical strength. Tang Yan shouted. The aura around his body became even more violent. He formed seals one after another. In the end, Tang Yan formed seals with one hand and a blade of fire in the other. He slashed fiercely at Zichen. Zichen's expression gradually changed. Obviously, Tang Yan's combat power was beyond his expectations. Although they were both first-grade ancient road warriors, Tang Yan's combat power was on a completely different level from Chunming's. If Zichen didn't have the pure strength of a peak 7th-grade expert and only used the origin energy of a mid-stage primordial core realm, it would be much more troublesome to kill Tang Yan. But with a 7th-grade strength, Zichen didn't think Tang Yan had a chance to survive. After mobilizing his physical strength to the limit, Zichen struck out with a powerful strength battle technique. All of Tang Yan's attacks were crushed under Zichen's fist light. At the same time, Zichen's body emitted a dazzling golden light. He rushed towards Tang Yan like a bolt of golden lightning. Boom! The two of them clashed again. Tang Yan's attack was crushed, and at the same time, a powerful rebound force sent Tang Yan flying back dozens of meters. Tang Yan's expression changed instantly. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes became even colder. His opponent's combat power was strong enough to threaten him. As Tang Yan's strength surged, a fire dragon rushed out from his body. The fire dragon was formed from flame energy, but it was comparable to a real fire dragon. The dragon's roar was clear and loud. "I want you dead." As soon as the fire dragon appeared, the dazzling light reflected on Tang Yan's face made his expression even more ferocious. His cold eyes were as sharp as a blade. After the first fire dragon, a second one appeared, followed by a third and a fourth. The surrounding sky realm warriors who had been following Tang Yan were all stunned when they saw the fire dragons. They didn't know that Tang Yan had such an attack method. The energy-formed fire dragons were so realistic. When the number of fire dragons beside Tang Yan reached 8, the dragon's roar was already echoing in the sky. The raging aura around the fire dragons made everyone retreat again and again. "You should be proud to be able to force me to this extent. Even if you die, it's worth it," said Tang Yan coldly. In the field, seeing the fire dragons, Zichen's face only flashed with a strange expression. He wasn't surprised or frightened. Above Zichen's head, the dragon let out a loud roar when it saw the fire dragons. This was a real dragon's roar, and it instantly covered the dragon's roar. At the same time, the dragon transformed into dozens of meters long, its body emitting a dazzling green light. It took the initiative to reveal its true body and rushed towards the fire dragons. I said, "You only have one way out." Zichen also clenched his fist and rushed towards Tang Yan. Zichen's peak 7th rank strength was displayed to the limit in the next moment. As his fist fell, a dazzling golden light penetrated the dazzling fire. Wherever the golden fist light passed, a loud rumble could be heard. A fire dragon was shattered and turned into burning flames that filled the sky. When Zichen destroyed one of the fire dragons, 2 of the fire dragons in the sky had already dissipated. The way the fire dragons dissipated was a bit strange. They weren't dissipated by the barbaric dragon, but after the barbaric dragon blew out a breath of green air, the fire dragons dissipated. This green gas was dragon chi. Not only was it harmless to dragons, but it was also considered life chi. However, to the fire dragons formed from energy, this was the most fatal thing. As they weren't real dragons, they could only dissipate after receiving this life dragon chi. The fire dragon's attack was Tang Yan's trump card, but seeing the fire dragons destroyed so easily, Tang Yin had a bad feeling in his heart. In the blink of an eye, all the fire dragons dissipated, and one man and one dragon closed in on Tang Yin from the sky. Tang Yin felt a dangerous aura at this moment. Against Zichen alone, he was already powerless. With the addition of the dragon, there was no chance of survival. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and attack! Tang Yin knew that he was no match for them, so he started retreating. After that shout, the other Tian-level experts finally reacted. Apart from the first two, who didn't move, the others rushed towards Zichen. Those two people were the two Tian-level cultivators who had followed Yanwu back then. At that moment, they were astonished. Tang Yin, who was extremely strong, wasn't a match for the Lei clan. The group of Tian-level experts rushed forward and heard a loud explosion from the sea of fire. Then, a figure flew out from the sea of fire. It was Tang Yin. At this moment, his face was filled with astonishment, and within that astonishment, there was also a trace of fear. The flames dissipated, and Zichen rushed towards Tang Yin again, waving his fist. As for the dragon, it rushed towards the other Tian-level experts. Boom! Facing Zichen's powerful attack, Tang Yin was once again sent flying. This time he started coughing blood. Seeing that Zichen's attack was getting stronger and stronger, Tang Yin's face was filled with fear. He knew that he had kicked an iron plate. His opponent's physical strength was not weaker than a Tian-level expert. Chapter 834. Zichen's strength had completely frightened Tang Yin. His opponent was clearly an existence comparable to a Xiantian realm warrior. Moreover, his strength was similar to his own. He was no match for him. Taking advantage of being pushed back, Tang Yin turned around and fled. However, in terms of speed, he was naturally much slower than Zichen. With the heavenly lightning wings, the 9 deaths of lightning was displayed. Among those of the same level, all the extreme speed movement techniques were inferior. Zichen chased after Tang Yin. At this place, after the Torvosaurus killed the 2 Xiantian realm warriors, the battle ended prematurely. Terrifying, too terrifying. The 2 Xiantian realm warriors who hadn't participated in the battle were filled with shock. Even Tang Yin was defeated and fled. They were glad that they knew their limits and didn't dare to make a move earlier. As for the other 4, they were still complaining that the 2 weren't loyal. However, after Tang Yin ran away, they immediately gave up the battle. On the ground, there were 2 gradually cold corpses. The Torvosaurus once again returned to its miniature size. However, the pressure on its body didn't disappear. The 6 of them stayed together. Under the Torvosaurus' gaze, they didn't dare to leave. Further away, there were some people who came to join in the fun. They came here to try their luck and find the lightning essence. Tang Yin's reputation was great here. Seeing Tang Yin run away, they were also extremely shocked. At this moment, everyone was guessing whether Tang Yin could escape. If it was any other time, they would naturally think that Tang Yin could escape. After all, if a Xiantian realm warrior insisted on escaping, even a Xiantian realm warrior couldn't do anything. However, the one chasing after Tang Yin was a Lightning Clan cultivator who possessed the fastest speed in the world. The possibility of Tang Yin escaping wasn't high. As expected, not long after, Zichen returned. His expression was extremely calm. No one could tell whether he had successfully killed Tang Yu or not. After returning, Zichen glanced at the Xiantian realm warriors. He ignored them and walked towards the 2 corpses. He directly took away all the resources on the 2 corpses. At the same time, he indifferently said, "Sigh, it's better to make money from the dead. Although the materials are useless, they can be exchanged for something in the future." When the 4 Tian-level cultivators heard that, their eyes twitched and their bodies couldn't help but tremble. On the side, the 2 experienced cultivators signaled the 4 of them to quickly go forward. The 4 of them stepped forward, trembling with fear. Each of them held a spirit ring in their hands. One of them said in a trembling voice, "Great Lord, these are all the resources we have on us. We hope that you will kindly accept them." Zichen looked at the four of them with a satisfied smile on his face. "Not bad, not bad." Taking the spirit rings from the four of them, Zichen praised them. "You guys did a good job. Seeing that you guys are so tactful, I'll let you guys off. However, if you feel unsatisfied, you can go and find some strong warriors to take revenge. Remember, the weakest ones should be at the same level as before, or even an innate rancor. As for the rest, don't come, they don't have enough resources." The four of them repeatedly said that they didn't dare, but their minds were shaken to the extreme. Clearly, Tang Yin was really dead. Don't just stand there in a daze. Hurry up and collect those people's resources. Zichen's words were directed at those people who had come to watch the show. The four of them were startled, but immediately understood. They flashed and flew away. As for those people who had come to watch the show, they were all dumbfounded. They swore to the heavens that they had only come to look for the essence of the lightning liquid. They had no other intentions toward Zichen. But even so, could it be that they couldn't avoid being extorted and robbed of all their resources? At that moment, they didn't know that it wasn't just them who couldn't avoid it. In this world, everyone who hadn't been robbed by Zichen couldn't avoid being robbed. Because of the trip to the ancient path, Zichen had become more aware of the importance of resources. He would rather have the resources in his hands go bad than have no resources at all. These people felt wronged, more wronged than the most wronged people in the world. They had accidentally joined in the fun and were about to be robbed and extorted. But Tang Yin had already been killed. How could they, whose strength was lower than Tang Yin's, dare resist? Thus, under the overbearing gazes of the four Sky Realm experts, they could only obediently hand over all their resources. They didn't get the essence of the lightning liquid, and their resources were robbed. They wanted to cry, but no tears came out. But they could only leave unwillingly. Right now, they only wanted resources. If they wanted materials later, they would really be finished. After handing over all their resources, they quickly left. Soon, only Zichen was left. When Zichen brought the barbarian dragon into the Silver World to look for Lei Ming, he suddenly saw this fellow from the Lightning Clan crying. At this level, Lei Ming looked young, but he was definitely not young. Take Zichen, for example. He looked young, but he was actually over 100 years old. It was just that his life force was still vigorous and hadn't declined yet. That was why he looked young. Lei Ming's age was definitely not younger than Zichen. Naturally, he was over 100 years old. But such a middle-stage primal core man was actually crying and crying. Seeing this man's tears dripping down, Zichen suddenly felt that there was a word that was extremely suitable to describe himself. He just couldn't help but bitterly smile. Lei Ming crying might seem strange, but if Zichen laughed at this moment, it would naturally be inappropriate. But if he cried along with Lei Ming, that would be even more inappropriate. Zichen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only ask, "What are you crying for?" Lei Ming raised his head to look at Zichen. He was still tightly clenching the 2 drops of lightning liquid essence in his hand. His tears were unceasingly flowing. Lei Ming had carried the mission of reviving the Lightning Clan since he was young. The hardships he had endured far surpassed his peers. Furthermore, his family had been extremely strict with him. Lei Ming had never felt familial love or protection. It was precisely because of all the hardships he had endured since he was young that while the other Lightning Clan experts had died one after another on the ancient path, Lei Ming had relied on his early primal core strength to carry the mission of reviving the Lightning Clan through the ancient path of the 5th and 7th ancient paths. In this place, Lei Ming had to swallow all the grievances and bitterness he had to endure. Everyone who tried to get close to him either directly beat him up for the lightning essence, or intentionally befriended him for the sake of the lightning essence because they weren't as strong as Lei Ming. Lei Ming had experienced all kinds of lies, betrayals over the years, but his heart was as firm as death. But Zichen's appearance had brought light to his dark heart. It was precisely because of Zichen that Lei Ming's despicable view of human nature had greatly changed. And today, in order to not implicate him, Zichen had sent him into the silver world and even gave him 2 drops of lightning liquid essence. Lei Ming had been here for several years, and he had long since obtained over 20 drops of lightning liquid essence. However, he had never refined a single drop. He could swear to the heavens that this was only the 2nd time he had seen lightning liquid essence, and the first time it had also been given to him by Zichen, but the first time it had been his own lightning liquid. Lei Ming was grateful, but he wasn't moved. But today, Zichen's 2 drops of lightning liquid had completely moved him. Lei Ming was so moved that he cried. Now that he saw Zichen appear, more tears appeared in his eyes. This feeling of being cared for by someone seemed to have only been hidden in his memories. Suddenly, Lei Ming seemed to think of something and immediately stopped crying. Wiping his tears, he asked, "Why are you here? Where's Tang Yin? Did he make things difficult for you?" "Tang Yin? Which Tang Yin?" asked Zichen. "That's him." Lei Ming gestured. "Oh, you mean him?" Zichen smiled. "He's a good person. He gave me all his resources without holding back and then left." "He left?" Lei Ming's eyes widened. Tang Yin wasn't so easy to talk to. In his memories, that wasn't the case. "Yes, he left." Zichen nodded. Lei Ming was full of questions. Tang Yin had clearly come here to cause trouble. How could he leave just like that? He couldn't help asking. "Then did he say where he was going?" "He didn't say. It could be heaven or it could be hell. But looking at his sad face, the possibility of him going to hell is higher," said Zichen indifferently. Lei Ming's eyes widened. The tears in his eyes immediately dissipated due to shock. Clearly, Zichen meant that Tang Yin had died. "He's dead. The incomparably powerful Tang Yin is actually dead." Lei Ming couldn't help but speculate about Zichen's unfathomable combat strength. "I thought you were refining the lightning liquid here. Since you haven't refined it, then put it away and come with me," said Zichen. "Where to?" "To find other trial takers, and see if there are any resources we can find." The 2 of them left the silver world and began to wander around this area. Whenever they saw traces of trial takers, Zichen would bring Lei Ming forward. And Lei Ming finally understood what Zichen meant by looking for resources. Looking for resources meant robbing. He actually wanted to rob all the cultivators here. This kind of spending greatly shocked Lei Ming. In the next few days, Zichen robbed 7 or 8 people. Just as Lei Ming's eyes widened, Zichen lamented that this speed was too slow. But during this time, in order to let Lei Ming have the strength to protect himself, Zichen taught him the 3 forms of the tyrannical fist. The tyrannical fist contained Zichen's comprehension, so it was faster to learn. And coupled with the tyrannical lightning origin energy, it could greatly increase Lei Ming's combat strength. In fact, Lei Ming was not weak. In a one-on-one battle, he could fight a Sky Realm expert to a draw. With this kind of combat strength, if placed in the Bedlam, he would definitely be a monster among monsters. But in a place like the Ancient Road, where monsters were as common as dogs, Lei Ming's combat strength became insignificant. As time passed, the news of Zichen robbing resources gradually spread in this world. Many people hurriedly fled this world because of this matter. During this period, there were naturally those who did not believe in the supernatural. But those who did not believe in the supernatural and tried to fight with Zichen were undoubtedly turned into cold corpses. Because the fight for resources was becoming more and more intense, it caused the entire area to become anxious. Everyone knew that a powerful thunder martial artist had appeared in this area. This situation persisted for several months before it finally attracted the attention of the Xiantian and Sky martial artists. At the same time, Xiantian Sky experts who had disappeared for several months in search of ancient skills, or experts who were as strong as Xiantian Sky experts, appeared one after another. When they heard the news about Zichen, they were extremely surprised. A powerful thunder warrior. Chapter 835. Xiantian martial artists, also known as Xiantian martial artists, had super strong battle strength. If Xiantian martial artists were known as the strongest martial artists of the same level, then Xiantian martial artists were the strongest among Xiantian martial artists. Every Xiantian martial artist of the same level could easily crush a Houtian martial artist with Xiantian techniques. Of course, this was a very high-level Xiantian technique that was in the hands of some super strong force. It was not a Xiantian technique used by Xiantian martial artists. Xiantian techniques were also suitable for Xiantian martial artists. Only Xiantian martial artists could practice them. In addition to the difference in essence, there was also a considerable gap in techniques between Xiantian martial artists and Houtian martial artists. Previously, several Xiantian martial artists had joined forces to enter a secret area to search for ancient techniques, but they never appeared. Several months later, they appeared one after another. In addition to the 5 Xiantian martial artists, there were several Houtian martial artists behind them. Although these people were not Xiantian martial artists, their battle strength was second only to the 6 of them, similar to Tang Yan's battle strength. Is the rumor reliable? Is this Lei Wu really that strong? A Xiantian martial artist in a luxurious blue robe asked as soon as they appeared in the secret area. Among them was a Houtian martial artist. He nodded and said, "His battle strength is indeed very strong. He knows several Lei clan techniques. Even Tang Yan was killed by him." Although Tang Yan was a Xiantian martial artist, he was not on the same side as them. But because he had stayed in this small world for a long time, he was quite famous. This person not only killed Tang Yan, but also said that Xiantian martial artists can go find him if they are not satisfied. And he has been here for several months, constantly plundering resources and robbing everyone he meets, not letting anyone go. Plundering resources. A Xiantian martial artist frowned slightly. To be able to kill Tang Yan, his battle strength is not weaker than a Xiantian martial artist. Whether he is a Xiantian martial artist or not, just the Lei Wu alone is worth roping in. A young man in a luxurious blue robe said, "He is near the thunder field. I will take you there." The Houtian martial artist said again. The group of more than 10 people walked towards the silver world. Of the 4 ancient clans, the other 3 have almost disappeared mysteriously. As for the Thunder Clan, they only exist in name. Without powerful techniques, their Houtian Thunder Warriors are mediocre. Even if they have Xiantian Thunder Warriors, their battle strength is not that strong. If they don't have Xiantian techniques, I'm afraid they are even weaker than Houtian warriors. Behind the 5 Xiantian warriors, a Houtian warrior said, "The Thunder Clan is one of the 4 great ancient clans. Even if they only exist in name, they should not be underestimated." The Xiantian realm warrior who frowned earlier said, "I have never looked down on the Thunder Clan, but neither have I overestimated them. Just look at that Lei Ming. Yao Tingfei, don't be careless. Could it be that you've forgotten about the starting ground and Ziqin?" The Xiantian expert said again. Upon hearing the 2 words Ziqin, Yao Tingfei's expression instantly changed. He coldly snorted and said with dissatisfaction, "Xia Xian, why are you mentioning Ziqin? If I'm not mistaken, Ziqin should be a thunder warrior," Xia Xian said. "What? He's a thunder warrior." Yao Tingfei's expression changed again. He tried to recall what had happened that day. It seemed that the ultimate Yuanli that Ziqin had used was extremely strange. Yao Tingfei coldly snorted and said, "So what if he's a thunder warrior? After entering the trial's strongest ancient path, he's already turned into a skeleton. Moreover, you've also felt that terrifying spiritual sense that day. He might not even be able to pass the first path." Although Yao Tingfei was not a Xiantian realm warrior, the ultimate Yuan Li in his body could be considered to be at the peak of the Houtian realm. Moreover, among the Houtian realm warriors, Yao Tingfei's battle strength was also one of the strongest. However, after hearing the name Ziqin, Yao Tingfei lost control of his emotions. Everyone was curious. What happened to your batch at the starting ground? Facing everyone's curious questions, Yao Tingfei coldly snorted again. He naturally would not say such a degrading thing. Helpless. Everyone's gaze fell on Xia Xian again. Xia Xian smiled and said, "It's not a big deal. I just encountered a weirdo who actually said that the guardian of the passageway was ugly and fat. After fighting with him, I was sent to the strongest ancient path." Yao Tingfei said exasperatedly, "What? There's actually someone who dared to say that the gatekeeper was ugly and fat, and even dared to fight." These people were obviously stunned. Then a mocking expression appeared on their faces. Very bold, very courageous, but his luck is not good. He was actually sent to the first-grade ancient path. Xia Xian said, "The gatekeeper is indeed very bold." After knowing that he was going to enter the strongest ancient path, in order to have a better chance of survival, he even snatched more than 80% of the trial taker's resources. More than 80%, that's more than 2,000 people. Didn't anyone fight back? Someone asked. Of course, there was, but the gatekeeper's battle strength was very strong. Moreover, he had two companions who were also ridiculously strong. Therefore, those who tried to fight back did not get a good result. Hearing this, everyone's face was full of smiles. Then, their gazes fell on Yao Tingfei. Obviously, they all understood what had happened. Xia Xian's gaze also fell on Yao Tingfei's extremely unsightly face. He smiled and said, "Yao Tingfei's luck is not good. He was robbed twice in succession." Hearing this, Yao Tingfei's expression became even more unsightly. He said coldly, "What are you laughing at?" At that time, I really didn't want to expose my super strong strength. Moreover, I also didn't want to be dragged into the strongest ancient path because of that. Otherwise, I would have already beaten him to the ground. Everyone laughed again. They all understood what was going on. Humph! So what if he was strong at that time? Entering the strongest path, he would definitely die. Yao Tingfei snorted coldly. That's not necessarily true. With that kind of battle strength, it's very likely that he would survive after entering the first-grade ancient path. Yao Tingfei, don't be so agitated. If the gatekeeper appears, we will definitely seek justice for you. Someone comforted him. But this time around, an unfathomable expression appeared on Yao Tingfei's face as he continued. The strongest ancient path isn't a first-tier ancient path. It's a path that's even stronger than the first-tier ancient path. If he enters that ancient path, he will definitely die. Although everyone was a Tian cultivator, it was obviously the first time they had heard that the strongest ancient path was not a first-grade ancient path. They all asked curiously. Yao Tingfei shared his limited knowledge with the group of people. After hearing this, everyone felt that it was inconceivable. They hadn't thought that there would be such a thing. Then, according to Zi Chen's situation, they came to the conclusion that Zi Chen would definitely die. Just as they were talking and laughing, they arrived outside the Silver World and saw Lei Ming practicing 9 fleeting lightning. In this world, Lei Ming's reputation was greater than Tang Yan's. Of course, it was a bit of a negative reputation. Apart from Xiantian cultivators, almost everyone knew Lei Ming. Lei Ming! Yao Tingfei shouted from afar. Lei Ming paused and then turned his head to see Yao Tingfei. Yao Tingfei had once taught him a lesson for the Thunder Essence, so he recognized him at a glance. However, when he saw that the powerful Yao Tingfei wasn't at the front of the group, but at the back, his expression changed. Realizing that something was wrong, Lei Ming dashed into the Silver World. Lei Ming had clearly learned his lesson by running into the Silver World. Lei Ming has been following that Lei Wu all this time. If Lei Ming is here, then that Lei Wu must be searching for the Thunder Essence in the depths. The Hotian cultivator, leading the way, said solemnly, "Then let's go in and drag Lei Ming out, then call that Lei Wu out." After saying this, a Xiantian cultivator walked in. Zi Chen had already stayed in this world for several months. During this time, apart from plundering resources, he had spent the rest of his time refining the Thunder Essence. It had to be said that the Thunder Essence was good stuff. He didn't know if it was true for others, but for Zichin, it was definitely a treasure. The Thunder Essence's effect on Zichin was no less than the strength fruit. In these few months, Zichin had already refined dozens of drops of Thunder Essence. The pure elemental energy in abdomen had also reached a limit and undergone a metamorphosis. This metamorphosis was a qualitative change. It made Zichin feel as if his spirit had become transparent. The moment his elemental energy transformed, Zichin actually felt as if his body had transformed. Moreover, this wonderful feeling didn't only come from the metamorphosis of his elemental energy, but even his soul seemed to have become pure. At the moment of metamorphosis, Zichin knew that although his elemental energy hadn't reached perfection, its purity had reached the Xiantian level. After the metamorphosis, Zichin compared his elemental energy with Lei Ming's. The difference between the two was actually more than 10 times. After his elemental energy metamorphosed to the Xiantian level, Zichin was already a powerful Xiantian lightning cultivator or a Xiantian lightning martial artist. Just in terms of elemental energy, Zichin already stood at the peak of the entire sky martial continent. Of course, this was on the premise that there wasn't a realm purer than Xiantian elemental energy. After the metamorphosis of his elemental energy, Zichin didn't leave. In any case, there was still a lot of Thunder Essence here. He wanted to completely stabilize his Xiantian realm. After refining another 10 drops, Zichin once again felt the fluctuations of Lei Ming's lightning strike. I've encountered danger again. Zichin opened his eyes. His eyes flashed gold and silver. After getting up, Zichin walked out of the silver world. At this moment, Lei Ming was being grabbed by the collar like a little chick. But this time, Lei Ming wasn't beaten up. Hearing that a Xiantian martial artist had come to find trouble with a Xiantian martial artist, many cultivators dared to come. They wanted to join in the fun, and it seemed that there were more than 10 trial takers here. Among them, there were naturally people who had their resources stolen by Zichin. They were eager to see Zichin suffer and be punished. Just as the group of Xiantian martial artists were interrogating Zichin about his whereabouts, Zichin walked out of the silver world. After walking out, Zichin found that there were many more cultivators around him. Moreover, they were all unfamiliar faces. A smile instantly appeared on his face. At the same time, the others also saw Zichin walking out. It can't be such a coincidence. Seeing Zichin, Xiaoxian's face revealed a strange expression as he muttered. They were both snatching resources, and they were both lightning cultivators. He had already guessed before, but he just laughed it off. How could it be so coincidental that the two of them were the same person? Chapter 836. Yao Tingfei's exclamation caused Zichin to turn around and look at the group of people. There were more than 10 people in this group, all of whom were Xiantian cultivators. Moreover, there were a few who looked extraordinary and should be Xiantian cultivators as well. Most importantly, Zichin actually found 2 familiar faces in this group. It's you guys. Seeing familiar faces, Zichin clearly smiled. Zichin had already appeared. Lei Ming was put down, and the latter ran towards Zichin, looking ahead with a guarded expression. Zichin's change in expression surprised Xiaoxian, but before he could hear the pleasant surprise in Zichin's words, Zichin continued, "You know that I don't have any more resources, so you specially came to deliver them to me, right?" Xiaoxian, who was walking towards Zichin, staggered and almost fell when he heard this. Yao Tingfei's expression, which was already ugly, became even uglier at this moment. The others hadn't reacted before, but when they heard Zichin's words, their expressions also changed. Obviously, they had already guessed that this person in front of them was the ugly and fat Su Fei, the one who had been sent to the ancient road of the strongest trial after fighting with her. "You're still alive, you're still alive." Yao Tingfei's flustered and exasperated voice sounded. Zichen smiled faintly. Of course I'm alive, and I'm very happy to see you. I didn't have time to thank you for the 2 times you gave me the essence liquid before. So with this one, I might as well thank you 3 times at once. You want to rob me? Yao Tingfei's voice became extremely sharp. Zi-chan extended 2 fingers towards Yao Tingfei and said indifferently, although you and I are old friends, we once said that we would still be strangers after meeting. Therefore, I'll give you 2 choices, one to live and one to die. If you live, you have to leave behind all your resources. But if you die, you can forget about it. Zi-chin, open your dog eyes wide and look carefully. I have 5 Xiantian martial artists here. 5. Do you understand what 5 means? Even if you are also a Xiantian martial artist, they can still beat you to a pulp. So what you should be worried about now is yourself. Yao Tingfei shouted from afar. Zi-chin shook his head and said, No, I should be worried about you. If I want to kill someone, no one can stop me. Zi-chen's arrogance and disregard of the Xiantian realm martial artists made them frown. Seeing that the situation was not good, Xia Xian quickly walked to the middle and said, All right, let's stop joking around. Zi-chin, we're here to discuss something important with you. Important matters? What matters more than my request for resources? Zi-chen looked at Xia Xian and said, What's your name again? Xia Xian. Black lines appeared on Xia Xian's forehead. Oh, Xia Xian, you should know my situation. Resources are my life. On your journey, you've already walked 5 or 8 paths. If you walk 1 more path, you'll have resources to exchange for. But for me, I only have 4 or 8 paths. There's still 10 paths to go. Moreover, because no one has set foot on my ancient path for many years, all the trading points are gone. It's not easy to come here alive. So, if you want to stop me from asking for resources, you want to take my life. Zi-chan looked at Xia Xian and said slowly, Anyone who wants to take my life, I will definitely take his life first. The surrounding air instantly turned cold because of Zi-chen's words. The atmosphere between the 2 sides became extremely oppressive. Apart from Xia Xian, the other 4 Xiantian realm martial artists all had killing intent surging from their bodies. But in their hearts, they were shocked by the content of Zi-chen's words. Sure enough, the strongest ancient path was not a place for people to stay. There wasn't even a place to exchange for resources. Xia Xian's expression didn't change. He looked at Zi-chen and said, Ancient skills. We've found a place with ancient skills. Ancient skills. Zi-chen's face had a trace of ridicule. I have so many battle skills that I can't use them all. Moreover, 1 move is enough to kill people. What's the use of so many skills? Zi-chen's answer caused everyone to stare. Obviously, Zi-chen's idea was contrary to common sense. As the saying goes, there's no harm in having more skills. Zi-chen actually thought that he had too many skills. No matter how many ordinary skills you have, it's useless. I strongly agree with this point. But the ancient skills I mentioned are very likely to be Xiantian ancient skills. Xia Xian said again. Zi-chen couldn't help but curl his lips, and a trace of ridicule appeared in his eyes. He said, What bullshit Xiantian ancient skills. I've long stopped using such rubbish skills. You're just a mere Xiantian realm martial artist. I used Xiantian skills when I was in the True Qi realm. Zi-chen's face was full of contempt and disdain, causing everyone to be shocked. They all guessed that Zi-chen might have several Xiantian skills, but when they heard the second half of his words, their faces became strange. In the end, their faces were full of contempt and disdain. They had thought that Yi Shiwen's battle strength was extraordinary. Who would have thought that he was a bumpkin who didn't even know Xiantian skills? Moreover, he even compared Xiantian skills with Xiantian battle skills. What's wrong? Zi-chen saw the changes in everyone's expression and felt that something was wrong. Xiantian skills are unique to Xiantian martial artists. Only Xiantian experts can cultivate and display the unique power of Xiantian skills. Lei Ming hurriedly transmitted to Ziqin. Cough, cough. Ziqin coughed lightly. He didn't expect such a thing. He then laughed and said, Hee, I felt that the atmosphere here is really cold, so I deliberately made a joke to ease the awkward atmosphere. Everyone curled their lips and rolled their eyes. Obviously, no one believed Ziqin. A bumpkin was a bumpkin, and no matter how he explained, he couldn't cover up his identity as a bumpkin. So you agree? Xia Xian asked. He didn't laugh at Ziqin. Of course, I'm very interested in this matter. We can indeed discuss it. Ziqin nodded. Yao Tingfei's eyes were full of ridicule, and he said mockingly, Do you know what Xiantian skills are? Bumpkin. Ziqin looked at Yao Tingfei and said coldly, Your attitude makes me very unhappy. Didn't you want to see Xiantian skills? Very well, I'll show you now. Yao Tingfei's eyes were full of contempt, and he said disdainfully, Don't scare me with Xiantian battle skills. I'll be very scared. After saying that, Yao Tingfei patted his chest and laughed loudly. Ziqin took 3 steps forward and was less than 10 meters away from Yao Tingfei. His smile became colder and colder. Don't worry, you'll definitely be satisfied. After saying that, Ziqin's body suddenly emitted a golden light. Ziqin's perfect body was fully mobilized by Ziqin at this moment, and the peak of 7th rank battle power was mobilized to the limit. In Ziqin's body, the power that belonged to his body followed a special path and rushed to Ziqin's right arm. Then this power passed through his right arm and rushed to Ziqin's right fist. Ziqin's right fist began to emit light, and in this boundless golden light, an extremely terrifying aura emerged. After feeling the terrifying aura in the golden light, everyone's face changed. Yao Tingfei felt a dangerous aura from the golden light, and the light around his body also surged, and he was already in a defensive posture. Then Ziqin punched out. With a punch, an extremely sharp whistling sound was heard in the air. The golden fist shot out from his fist and fiercely hit Yao Tingfei. Yao Tingfei shouted and mobilized the energy in his body to form layers of defense. Bang! The golden fist landed on Yao Tingfei's body, and after a tremor, there was a series of cracking sounds. The fist shattered all the energy light shields that Yao Tingfei had put up, and then the fist hit Yao Tingfei's body. The latter let out a cry of surprise and was directly sent flying. Yao Tingfei, who was sent flying, began to cough up blood, and his face was full of shock. The other Xiantian martial artists' faces were also filled with shock, because what Ziqin had just used was actually a Xiantian combat skill. How was it? I didn't disappoint you, right? Are you scared? After punching out, Ziqin retracted his fist, his face full of ridicule. Today he had repelled Yao Tingfei with a single punch, and his attack power was much stronger than when he had killed Tang Yin. In addition to the several breaths of time that Ziqin had spent gathering energy, the more important reason was that during this time, not only had Ziqin's yuan energy transformed, but even that extremely complex strength technique had also improved. If this strength technique was divided into levels, then Ziqin had already broken through to the 2nd level. Breaking through to the 2nd level in a few decades was indeed not fast, but when he thought about how extraordinary this technique was, Ziqin was satisfied. Moreover, everyone's expressions had already clearly told Ziqin that this strength technique was already a Xiantian technique. The aghast Yao Tingfei staggered to his feet, not daring to say another word. But Ziqin stared at Yao Tingfei and coldly said, The punch I demonstrated to you just now was very enjoyable, but it consumed too much of my energy. I need at least 1,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid to replenish it. You have to compensate me for this loss. When Yao Tingfei, who had just gotten up, heard this, he was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood. He had already been injured by a single punch, yet the other party actually wanted him to compensate, and 1,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid at that. A single punch could consume 1,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid. Even a ghost wouldn't believe such words. I don't have any, not even a drop, Yao Tingfei loudly said. At the same time, he felt very wronged. It seemed that he was the victim, the one who should be the one asking for compensation. It seems that you're very uncooperative. That makes things very difficult for me, Zi Chen calmly said, but there was killing intent in his eyes. Helpless, Xia Xan could only mediate. For the sake of the big picture, Yao Tingfei finally gritted his teeth and asked for 200 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid. After handing the yuan liquid to Zi Chen, Yao Tingfei felt so wrong that he was about to cry. Why was he always the one who was injured and at a disadvantage? In the distance, the others had originally thought that this would be a good show where Zi Chen would be hung up and beaten. They hadn't expected that Zi Chen would actually beat someone up and even ask for compensation. The development of the situation was completely out of their expectations. After collecting the yuan liquid, Zi Chen's expression became much more solemn. He looked at Xia Xian and said, "We'll talk about the Xiantian technique later. I still have a very important matter to attend to." "What matter must you attend to now?" Xia Xian asked. "It's very important. It's comparable to my life." Zi Chen's gaze swept over the cultivators watching the show in the distance. Chapter 837. Zi Chen glanced at the trial takers in the distance. They didn't know why, but they suddenly had a bad feeling. "Go. I only want resources. I don't want materials. I don't want your life," Zi Chen said after looking around. "Okay." Lei Ming walked out from behind Zi Chen and walked towards the crowd. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lei Ming walked towards the trial takers. Many of the trial takers in front of him had bullied him before. While the crowd was still confused, Lei Ming imitated Zi Chen and stretched out 2 fingers. He said proudly, 2 choices, live and die. If you live, leave the resources. If you die, forget it. They didn't expect that the thing that Zi Chen said was more important than life was snatching resources. This was the so-called business. All the Khanate and acquired warriors were speechless. In the distance, the crowd of cultivators was in an uproar. "Lei Ming, what did you say? Do you dare to say it again?" "Lei Ming, you are really bold. You actually dared to rob me. Are you courting death? Have you forgotten the lesson I taught you last time?" A loud shout came from the crowd that was in an uproar. Anger appeared on their faces. There were dozens of cultivators here. There were 3 Khanate warriors and more than 10 acquired warriors. There were even 5 or 6 people who were as strong as Tang Yin. Zi Chen was only in the middle stage of the core realm. Even if he was in the mortal realm, he would die if he was surrounded by so many cultivators. However, under such circumstances, Lei Ming still dared to rob them. It was as if he didn't care about their strength. Lei Ming's expression didn't change. He said coldly, "Make your choice." "Lei Ming, how dare you talk to me like that? You're courting death." A acquired warrior shouted angrily and rushed towards Lei Ming. In the past, he had viciously kicked Lei Ming's, but at that time, not only did Lei Ming not dare to resist, he didn't even dare to show any anger. He was as timid as a grandson. Therefore, now that Lei Ming had turned the tables on him, he was very angry and felt humiliated. The acquired warrior rushed towards Lei Ming. Lei Ming, who had been here for many years and had never fought back, clenched his fists. "How dare you resist?" The acquired warrior shouted angrily and attacked with a turbulent energy. Lei Ming punched, the first form of the tyrannical fist. Thunder and lightning energy surged wildly at this moment, and a blinding silver light filled the sky. At this moment, Lei Ming's figure suddenly became stalwart, like a thunder giant standing between heaven and earth. The tyrannical fist was one of the ancient martial arts. This fist technique wasn't very famous in the Chaos Lands, but in the entire martial heaven continent, it was extremely famous. Suddenly seeing Lei Ming use the tyrannical fist, everyone below the Xiantian realm had a change in expression. Even the eyes of the Xiantian realm martial artists flashed with a strange light. Bang! With a loud bang, the acquired realm martial artist was sent flying by Lei Ming's punch. The powerful impact caused the acquired realm martial artist to bleed from the corner of his mouth. There was a look of shock on his face. He had never fought with Lei Ming before because Lei Ming had never made a move before. He did not expect Lei Ming to be so powerful in this battle. After punching, Lei Ming did not stop. A silver light flashed under his feet, and the Lightning Tribe's extreme speed steps appeared again. He turned into a silver light and rushed towards the acquired realm martial artist. In the process of rushing forward, Lei Ming clenched his fist again. Thunder and lightning elemental energy filled his body like a raging thunder snake. Around Lei Ming's clenched fist, there was a surge of dazzling lightning. Lei Ming then clenched his fist and punched again. The second style of the tyrannical fist. The wind from the fist changed, and one punch turned into hundreds of punches, each with extraordinary power. If the previous punch that forced the acquired realm martial artist back was said to be shocking, then the appearance of hundreds of punches that were only weaker than the first style shocked everyone to the extreme. Numerous punches fell on the acquired realm martial artist's body, and the sound of explosions could be heard. Facing the strong impact, the acquired realm martial artist coughed out blood. After coughing out blood, he activated the elemental energy in his body to form a super strong defense to protect his body and, at the same time, to block the punches. The punches dissipated, and the acquired realm martial artist blocked the attack. But it was not over yet. Following that, the third style appeared. The third style was still one punch, but with the accumulation of energy from the previous two styles, the energy contained in this attack was more powerful. Boom! Lei Ming flashed in front of the acquired realm martial artist, and with one punch he destroyed all of his opponent's defense and hit his opponent's chest. The super strong light shield formed by the elemental energy was shattered in an instant. Then, the crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard, and the acquired realm martial artist coughed out a large amount of blood and flew backward. After flying backward and landing on the ground, the acquired realm martial artist's pale face was filled with shock. 3 punches, and acquired realm martial artist was severely injured. Lei Ming's action was obviously to fight an enemy that was of a higher level. If Zichen did not say that he did not want people to die, the acquired realm martial artist would not have survived. As a member of the Thunder Tribe, Lei Ming did not have super strong combat techniques, so he could only fight an acquired realm martial artist. But with super strong combat techniques, the people of the Thunder Tribe had the demeanor of an ancient tribe. The surroundings were dead silent, and the silver light around Lei Ming slowly retracted. He stood proudly, and his cold eyes scanned the surroundings and said coldly, 2 choices, one to live and one to die. Everyone's heart trembled, and this time they did not dare to say anything. The experts in the distance did not stop Lei Ming, and it was obvious that they did not want to be involved in this matter. Even if they could crush Lei Ming together, they should not forget that other than Lei Ming, there was also Zichen, and Zichen had a green dragon beside him. Therefore, these people made the same choice as the others before. Although they were unwilling, they had to hand over their resources. At the same time, many of them secretly sighed. They were just here to join in the fun, but they did not expect to be robbed. Lei Ming proudly collected the resources. After being here for so many years, this was the first time he could hold his head high, the first time he was in the limelight, and the first time he was in the limelight. In just a few months, he was able to use the 3 tyrannical styles. Other than his talent, it was mostly due to Zichen. This was because Zichen had given Lei Ming enough inheritance and understanding. It could be said that Lei Ming was cultivating according to Zichen's understanding, which was equivalent to stepping on the shoulders of a giant. In addition, with his talent, it was natural that he would be able to understand quickly. Lei Ming put all the resources in a spiritual ring, then walked back and handed the ring to Zichen. Regarding this, The group of Xiantian experts were expressionless, but Yao Tingfei's eyes flashed with disdain. Putting away the resources in the spiritual ring, Zichen looked at Xia Xan and said, "Okay, now it's time to talk about the Xiantian level techniques. Where are they, and what do you need me to do?" 5 Xiantian experts came to find Zichen, but they did not look for trouble. Obviously, they had something to ask of him. "Let's talk as we walk." Xia Xian signaled. Zichen nodded and signaled for Lei Ming to follow. "He's coming too." Suddenly a voice sounded. It was Yao Tingfei, and his gaze fell on Lei Ming. "He can't go." Zichen looked at Yao Tingfei. "He's so weak. Going there is simply courting death." Yao Tingfei said disdainfully. Zichen replied coldly, "If there is really danger, I can guarantee that the one who dies will be you." "You!" Yao Tingfei was furious, but before he could do anything, he was stopped by someone. "Lei Ming can follow." Xia Xen said indifferently, and at the same time glanced at Yao Tingfei with a fierce look. Yao Tingfei did not say anything. Of course, Thundercry had to follow. The reason he was able to stand out so much today was because he had Zichen as his backer. If it weren't for Zichen, then Thundercry would have been instantly torn to shreds by the crowd of trial challengers. In the group, there were 5 Xiantian experts, 6 Hotian experts, and a total of 13 people, including Zichen and Lei Ming. Among the 13 people, Xia Xian mainly introduced the other 4 Xiantian experts. They were He Zhe, Zhongmeng, Lanlang, and Qinli. However, he only introduced their names and did not introduce their strength or what they were good at. The 4 of them did not talk much, and everything that needed to be explained was done by Xia Xen. Other than the Lightning Tribe, what are the other 3 ancient races? After Xia Xian's introduction, Zichen asked. Xia Xian smiled. The 4 ancient races are the Sun, Moon, Star, and Lightning tribes. These 4 races represent 4 different kinds of energy. However, the 4 ancient races are very mysterious. The Sun, Moon, and Star races haven't appeared in many years. It's like they've vanished into thin air. As for the Lightning tribe, they occasionally appear, but they're all searching for techniques. They can be considered to have declined. Xia Xian was telling the truth. The Lightning tribe had declined, and the other 3 races were extremely mysterious. It was like they had vanished. He didn't know much about them. The Lightning tribe also cultivates peak energy. The other 3 races are probably the same. Peak energy represents celestial experts. Could it be that the Martial Heaven Alliance doesn't know about the other 3 races? Zichen's question caused everyone to be startled. Xia Xian shook his head. No. The people of the 4 ancient races can be called celestial experts, but they aren't under the jurisdiction of the Martial Heaven Alliance. The ancient races are an ancient race, while the 4 ancient races are the head of the ancient races. They have no relation to the Martial Heaven Alliance. After a pause, Xia Xian continued, although the Martial Heaven Alliance is an alliance of celestial experts, there are too many powers and families involved. So many that it's impossible to calculate. However, if you want to clearly divide them, they're divided into 5 powers based on their yuan energy. 5 powers? Zichen looked at Xia Xian. Xia Xian nodded. The 5 powers are metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. These are the powers of the 5 elements. What Xia Xian said was similar to what the barbarian god had told him. However, Zichen was extremely curious about the most ancient races. The techniques here are all the most ancient. It's said that this place originally belonged to the ancient race's trial path. Later, it was broken through by someone. Xia Xian told him some secrets that Zichen didn't know. However, after breaking through this place, the laws of heaven and earth changed. Any existence above the mortal yuan realm would be expelled or killed as soon as they entered this world. That's why the techniques here weren't forcibly taken away. That's why we were able to obtain them by chance. Chapter 838. You seem to know this place very well. Have you been here before? Zichen asked. Xia Xian chuckled and said, "How could that be? This is the ancient road. Everyone can only come here once. Once you miss it, you won't have another chance." Then Xia Xian talked about some things about this world. Zichen and Lei Ming's eyes flashed, but the others were indifferent. Obviously, they already knew. Xia Xian didn't say where these secrets came from, but Zichen guessed that it had something to do with the power he belonged to. After walking for hundreds of thousands of miles, they arrived at the place Xia Xian talked about. It was a mountain peak tens of thousands of meters high. The walls of the mountain peak were smooth and steep, like a sharp blade. The huge mountain peak seemed to be made of a huge rock. When they were a few thousand meters away from the mountain peak, they stopped and walked forward. The surroundings of this mountain peak are restricted airspace with the nature of death. Any cultivator who attempts to fly up will undoubtedly be killed. Even Xiantian martial artists will die. Xia Xian explained. Zichen nodded and didn't say much. As they got closer to the mountain peak, he gradually felt an oppressive aura. As they got closer, the aura became even more oppressive. The group walked to the foot of the mountain. Zichen saw that there were many small stone steps at the bottom of the mountain. These stone steps were next to each other, winding around the entire mountain until they reached the peak. There were at least a few 100,000 steps. They walked to the foot of the mountain and stopped. There is an energy barrier in front of the stone steps. It seems to be a test of strength. Just as Xia Xian was explaining, the others stepped on the stone steps. They had been here before and already knew about this. They passed through smoothly. After the Xiantian warriors stepped on, the Hotian warriors followed. "Humph, if you're not strong enough, you'd better leave early." Yao Tingfei snorted. After the barrier rippled, he stepped on the stone steps. After stepping on, he didn't go forward immediately. Instead, he turned his head and looked at Lei Ming with a mocking expression. Obviously, he wanted to see Lei Ming make a fool of himself. Only Xiantian warriors and late primordial core warriors could come up here, unless they had pure and powerful strength. Zichen was naturally capable of this, but Lei Ming might not be. Hence, Yao Tingfei stood there, waiting to watch the show. Everyone went up except for Zichen and Lei Ming. Zichen didn't go up immediately. Instead, he signaled Lei Ming to go forward. "Can I do it?" Lei Ming, who was already nervous, felt even more uncertain after seeing Yao Tingfei's expression. "Don't worry." Zichen waved his hand and pretended to be carefree. In fact, he was not confident either. The others also looked at Lei Ming. Even the Xiantian realm martial artists did the same. No one knew if they wanted to watch a show or if they were anticipating something. After Zichen nodded his head in encouragement, Lei Ming walked forward. He stepped onto the stairs and ripples appeared on the barrier. These ripples were like water ripples, forming a kind of energy shield. When the people in front of him entered, this water-like energy shield would automatically part and open up a path. However, at this moment, when Lei Ming stepped forward, the energy shield did not part and directly blocked Lei Ming outside. Lei Ming was startled and his expression changed. "Haha!" Yao Tingfei's hearty laughter came from above. Lei Ming's face turned ugly. He took another step forward, but it was still the same. Suddenly, a lightning mark flashed between his eyebrows. Yao Tingfei's laughter came through the light shield. It was so carefree that it was annoying, but his laughter ended quickly. It was as if his neck was suddenly choked. He couldn't make any other sound. The light shield that blocked Lei Ming disappeared in the next moment. Lei Ming walked in without any hindrance. "This." Yao Tingfei's mocking expression froze. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. When they walked in, the energy ripples only opened a small gap for them. Lei Ming's realm was not high enough, and he wasn't strong. But after he walked in, the energy shield disappeared completely. Yao Tingfei looked at all this in a daze. His face was full of disbelief. Zichen chuckled and walked up the stairs. Even when Zichen walked up the stairs, the energy shield didn't appear. The rest of the Xiantian realm martial artists had been paying attention to Lei Ming. When they saw the energy shield disappear, a strange light flashed in their eyes. Xia Exen directly said, "We suspected that this was the doing of the ancient race." Sure enough, this place has great benefits for the ancient race. There's no need to test one's strength. One just needs to have an ancient race identity. As Xia Exen's words fell, the others nodded. Then they glanced at Lei Ming. Zi Chen pretended not to know. This was just a small interlude. Everyone continued to walk forward, but Yao Tingfei's expression was a little unnatural. This ancient road was originally a part of the ancient road of the strongest smelting trial. Many of the techniques and inheritances within were specially prepared for the challengers of the ancient road of the strongest smelting trial. Anyone who could reach this point would have to go through a slaughter trial and have their strength verified, such as Zichen. Zichen had spent dozens of years slaughtering his way here. The hardships and dangers he had faced along the way weren't something that an ordinary person could imagine. Even these Xiantian realm martial artists who had come from the ancient road of the strongest trial couldn't imagine just how terrifying the tribulations and dangers Zichen had faced were. And the foundation of this world's existence was to allow the trial challengers who had the qualifications to reach this place to easily obtain these skill inheritances. This could be considered a reward for the trial challengers. But the influences of the ancient road of the strongest trial had forcefully broken open this place and sent trial challengers from other ancient roads here. They hadn't experienced the same tribulations as Zichen, but they had obtained the same harvests as Zichen. This was simply taking advantage of a loophole. These were originally exclusive to the ancient road of the strongest trial, but now they had been forcibly distributed to everyone, becoming something that could be shared. Moreover, according to Xia Exen, there were many strange places like this mountain peak in this region. There were almost no dangers here, and the chances of obtaining these skills were high as long as one had enough lucky chances. During the process of climbing to the summit, Zichen guessed that there would be some sort of test of strength that would appear along the way. But even as the group climbed up the hundreds of thousands of steps and reached the summit, nothing strange happened. Above the summit was an open space. In the center of this open space was a 3-meter tall stone platform. The edges of this stone platform were engraved with many clear runes that extended all the way to the top of the stone platform. Xia Exen pointed at the stone platform and said, "That is a transmission stone platform. It doesn't require any energy to activate. The place where we are teleported to is our destination." Zichen nodded his head, after which the crowd took a step forward and stepped onto the stone platform that Xia Exen had pointed out. Immediately, the runes on the stone platform lit up. Brilliant rays of light flowed as the crowd's figures disappeared one by one. Stepping onto the transmission stone platform, when everyone appeared, they had already arrived in another space. This was an ancient world. Everything here emitted a simple and unadorned aura. There were towering and precipitous mountain peaks, flat stones that seemed to have been carved by a knife, and ancient trees that had existed for an unknown number of years. There were green mountains, clear water, white clouds, and golden sunlight. In a trance, it gave people the illusion that they had arrived in the martial sky continent. At the same time, the entire world gave people a feeling of tranquility, nature, and peace. How can this be? This world in front of him made Zi Chen's heart exceptionally calm. Just as Zi Chen was quietly enjoying this rare tranquility, a startled cry came from the side. This startled cry came from the Xiantian expert, Qin Li. He had been silent the entire time. Other than the 2 sentences he had said to Zichen, he hadn't spoken a single word. "Didn't I take away the inheritance on this stone wall? Why is it still here?" At the same time, the other Xiantian expert, Zhong Meng's expression also changed. Then, like a chain reaction, cries of surprise came from the mouths of the others. Zi Chen's gaze followed the direction of everyone's startled cries. The first thing he saw was a stone wall. At first glance, the stone wall was smooth, but there was nothing special about it. However, in this area, a stone wall that seemed to have been carved by a knife was abnormal. As Zichen released his spiritual sense, he immediately discovered that there was actually another world within the stone wall. This was a kind of technique inheritance. If a Hotian expert had come here, they would definitely have cried out that they had found a precious treasure. However, to Zichen, who was a Xiantian lightning cultivator, these techniques that could be called precious treasures were only Hotian techniques. After discovering a Hotian technique on a stone wall, Zichen saw a stone tablet. The stone tablet had very ancient characters on it. This was also a Hotian technique. Hotian techniques covered a wide range. Almost all combat techniques that were not Xiantian techniques could be called Hotian techniques. For example, Zichen's Thunderbolt Finger and Thunder Summoning Technique were both Hotian techniques. This kind of technique was popular. Except for a few restrictions, almost all cultivators could practice it. However, for Xiantian experts who had surpassed the Hotian level and reached the Xiantian level, these Hotian techniques were inferior and far less powerful than Xiantian techniques. Although Hotian techniques were not very useful to them, they were very useful to their forces or families. Therefore, they naturally would not let go of these techniques and let them go to waste. They did not want to spend a long time comprehending them, so they used their magic power to directly take away these things that contain the techniques and leave them for their families to inherit. However, at this moment, everyone was shocked to find that the techniques that they had put away earlier had appeared here. What was even more strange was that the techniques that they had put away in their spiritual rings had disappeared. This strange phenomenon caused everyone to cry out in surprise. After understanding the cause and effect, Zichen's face was also filled with surprise. Obviously, the things here could only be comprehended and could not be taken away at will. Zichen looked at Lei Ming and said, "There is no danger here. You can stay here and comprehend slowly." Lei Ming nodded. The Hotian techniques here were very useful to him. As for the Xiantian techniques, Lei Ming did not have extravagant hopes. Chapter 839. Lei Ming had just sat down when Zichen's voice rang out in his mind. Don't relax your vigilance while comprehending a technique. If you notice anything strange, quickly flee. Zichen's transmission confused Lei Ming. A green light shot over from the distance. It was actually the barbarian dragon. The barbarian dragon coiled around Lei Ming's waist, giving him fright. Remember, be careful. Zichen transmitted again. Lei Ming stayed behind, but no one said anything. As for the barbarian dragon leaving, although everyone had strange expressions, they didn't say anything. The reason Zichen had left Lei Ming and the barbarian dragon behind was because of the gazes of the Xiantian experts. Clearly, this place was generous to the Lei clan. Perhaps there were some special places that required the Lei clan to open. Zichen and Lei Ming were both members of the Lei clan. But compared to Zichen, Lei Ming was weaker and easier to control. So Zichen had kept an eye out for Lei Ming. For Lei Ming's safety, he had ordered the barbarian dragon to protect him. As for himself, Zichen was confident that even if he was surrounded, he would be able to escape with his extreme speed. The Hotian realm warriors had been following them as they ventured deeper, although they couldn't comprehend the Xiantian level techniques. But in this area, if they were lucky enough, they could obtain a combination of Xiantian and Hotian level techniques. That kind of technique was publicly recognized as the strongest. For example, the Lei clan's long-lost 9 fleeting lightning was a kind of footwork technique that combined Xiantian and Hotian techniques. Before the 6 fleeting lightning, that footwork technique would only be considered a Hotian technique. But after the 7 fleeting lightning, it would become a Xiantian technique. Other than that, there were also many techniques that fused Xiantian and Hotian techniques. It was said that those techniques were created by powerful Xiantian experts for their juniors. They could allow their juniors to grow stronger step by step. But the techniques they created were only Xiantian techniques that were fused with Hotian techniques. In the entire history of the Martial Heaven continent, there hadn't been many people who were able to create Xiantian techniques. Furthermore, in the entire Martial Sky continent, there were all kinds of strange resources and strange cultivation techniques. The number of Xiantian martial artists that could be created was high, but the number of Xiantian techniques was pitifully small. Therefore, even if one was a Xiantian martial artist, it was impossible for them to possess multiple Xiantian techniques. Under normal circumstances, they would only possess one or at most two. Compared to possessing several or even more than 10 Hotian techniques, the difference was like heaven and earth. Therefore, innate stage techniques were always in high demand. As they moved forward, they encountered their first restriction. This restriction was a test of strength. Everyone looked at each other. Then, a Hotian warrior made a move. After accumulating power for 3 seconds, the opponent unleashed an extremely powerful attack. With a loud bang, the restriction was shattered. After the restrictions were broken, the group continued to advance. Another layer of restrictions was broken, and there was nothing else inside. There were only 1 or 2 post-celestial techniques. Everyone's focus was not here, so they continued to advance. Along the way, Xia Xian informed him that this restriction could only be attacked once. If the first attack failed, then the second attack would be useless. After that, the second and third restrictions were broken with great force. The deeper they went, the stronger the defenses of the restrictions became. By the time they reached the 4th restriction, the strength of the restrictions had exceeded the attack range of a Hotian martial artist. Only a Xiantian martial artist could make a move. The 5 people looked at each other. Then, Qin Li made a move. Everyone retreated. Qin Li stood in front of the restriction, his body surging with Xiantian Yuan Qi. This was the first time Ziqin had seen a Xiantian martial artist make a move. It was also the first time he had sensed the 5 elements Xiantian Yuan Qi. Qin Li used the power of water. This kind of Yuan Qi contained traces of coldness, like ice, causing people to feel extremely uncomfortable. After pushing his Xiantian Yuan Qi to the limit, Qin Li waved his palm. A terrifying ice aura surged out. This layer of defensive restriction shattered with a bang. Next, the 5th, 6th, and 7th restrictions were broken by the other 3 Xiantian martial artists. They controlled the Xiantian Yuan Qi of wood, fire, and earth. Ziqin was lucky enough to see 4 of the 5 elements. Then, the 8th restriction was broken by Xia Xian. The power Xia Xian controlled was actually the power of gold. The 5 of them actually represented all 5 elements. This surprised Ziqin. Today, Ziqin finally saw the 5 elements Xiantian Yuan Qi. After the 8th restriction was broken, no one found any Xiantian techniques. Next was the 9th restriction. This restriction had caused them to return in defeat last time. Ziqin, the last time we came here, we couldn't break through the restrictions on the 9th floor, Xia Xian explained. Ziqin looked at Xia Xian and asked doubtfully, "If you can't break it, can I?" The 5 of them each made a move. Although they didn't use any Xiantian techniques, Ziqin could still feel their strength. If they only used Xiantian Yuan Qi, Ziqin wouldn't be a match for any of them, because these people were already at the peak of the inner core realm. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call them the strongest. The restriction on the 9th level has a strong lightning attribute. You're from the lightning clan, so you might be able to break it, Xia Xian explained. Just as they were talking, a bolt of lightning flashed across the restriction, bringing with it a bright silver light. Ziqin nodded and said, "All right, I'll give it a try." Because this restriction could only be attacked once, no one touched it before, nor did they show it to Ziqin. Ziqin stood in front of the 9th restriction while the others retreated. On one hand, Ziqin needed to accumulate energy. On the other hand, they retreated to signal to Ziqin that he could attack with all his strength. They wouldn't sneak up on him. Looking at the 9 restrictions in front of him, Zichen didn't immediately accumulate energy to attack. Instead, he released his spiritual senses. Zichen had also released his spiritual senses in the first 8 restrictions and carefully sensed them. However, it had to be said that under the sensing of Zichen's spiritual senses, the 8 restrictions that seemed stronger and stronger to the others were the same to Zichen's spiritual senses. Now that his spiritual senses sensed the restriction on the 9th level, Zichen suddenly realized that what his spiritual senses sensed was actually the same restriction. Why is it like this? Zichen looked at the restriction with a look of confusion on his face. Under the sensing of his spiritual senses, this restriction didn't seem to exist, not to mention accumulating energy to attack. Zichen felt that even if he poked it lightly with his finger, it would break. The confusion on Zichen's face gradually turned into a strange expression. Behind him, the people who were quietly waiting for Zichen to exert his strength were also puzzled when they didn't see Zichen accumulating energy for a long time. As time passed, the crowd's confusion turned into impatience. However, seeing that Zichen didn't move, they didn't want to disturb him. After a long time, the crowd finally lost their patience. After a few Xiantian realm martial artists exchanged glances, they all looked at Yao Tingfei. The latter didn't get along with Zichen in the first place, so there was no harm in saying a few more words. Seeing the crowd's gazes and understanding the meaning of their gazes, Yao Tingfei's face immediately filled with displeasure. However, he couldn't do anything at this moment. He could only shout at Zichen, "Hey, I'll talk!" But before Yao Tingfei could finish speaking, Zichen finally moved. However, he wasn't accumulating energy. Instead, he gently pointed his finger forward without the slightest bit of energy. "Don't!" Seeing Zichen's actions, one of the Xiantian realm martial artists shouted, "It doesn't matter if you're accumulating energy or not. As long as you point your finger, it'll count as an attack." You! Just like Yao Tingfei, this Xiantian realm martial artist hadn't finished speaking when a shocking scene occurred in front of him. He saw Zichen's finger gently pass through the 9 layers of restrictions as if there was nothing there. After his finger passed through the restrictions, his entire hand and his right arm followed. Behind him, the crowd was completely stupefied. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. During this time, Zichen's entire right arm and body had already passed through the restrictions. Before the crowd could shout "don't," Zichen's entire body had already passed through the restrictions and disappeared. He was gone just like that, but the restrictions were still there. Everyone was dumbfounded and looked at each other again. A cold light suddenly appeared in Qin Li's eyes. Then the Yuan energy within his body began to surge. His entire body transformed into a ray of blue light that fiercely attacked the 9 layers of restrictions in front of him. Boom! Qin Li's powerful Xiantian technique instantly bombarded the 9 layers of restrictions. To Zichen, these restrictions were extremely easy, but in front of Qin Li they were like iron walls. After a violent explosion, a shock wave came from the restrictions, and Qin Li was instantly sent flying by the shock wave. Damn it, how could this be? An exasperated voice came from Qin Li's mouth. Not only Qin Li, but the others also couldn't understand how Zichen could pass through such a strong defense so easily. Seeing this, Xia Exen smiled bitterly and said, "As expected, these things were prepared for the aboriginals. As outsiders, it's much more difficult for us to get the things here. What should we do now? Are we going to let that Zichen take advantage of us? Damn it, that's a Xiantian technique. A technique that makes everyone go crazy. He's accursed. We can't just let it go like this. Didn't Zichen want the Xiantian technique? Very well, he'll get it. But we'll guard here. As long as he dares to come out, we'll kill him together." Lan Lang said with a gloomy face. They had paid too much for this, but they didn't expect that someone would beat them to it. Just when everyone was vexed, Yao Tingfei's eyes lit up. Then his body began to flicker as he flew towards the back. "Yao Tingfei, where are you going?" Qin Li shouted. Lei Ming, did you forget Lei Ming? He's still outside. As long as we catch him, we can go in. Yao Tingfei said excitedly. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. Because they were too angry, they actually forgot about Lei Ming. Lei Ming was also a member of the Lei clan, so he could definitely go in. Then hurry up and bring a few more people. We must bring him here, Qin Li said coldly. Chapter 840. The sudden appearance of an arm caught the attention of the 5 Xiantian realm martial artists. Under their astonished gazes, a figure appeared from behind the arm. The one who walked out of the restriction was naturally Ziqin, who had just entered. When Ziqin appeared, he saw that there were only 5 people left. The other 6 were already far away. He smiled faintly and asked, "Why did they run? Were they afraid?" After being asked by Ziqin, Xia Xian's astonished face immediately turned awkward. The other 4 people were startled. Qin Li even asked, "Ran? Who ran?" Then Qin Li inadvertently turned around and saw that the 6 Hotian realm martial artists had actually run far away. He immediately shouted, "Hey, why are you guys running?" Qin Li's voice was very loud. The 6 people in the distance all heard him. When they stopped and turned around, they saw Ziqin. Seeing Ziqin appear, the 6 people were immediately stunned. "Why are you guys running for no reason?" Besides Qin Li, He also shouted in confusion. The 6 people ran back from afar. They didn't say a word, but they looked at Ziqin with a strange expression. Ziqin had a playful look on his face and asked, "Why are you guys running? Did you guys run into something you're afraid of?" "Yeah, why are you guys running?" Qin Li also asked. The 6 people didn't say anything. In this kind of situation, it seemed like they could only be speechless. If they were betrayed, then so be it. After all, the other party was a Xiantian realm martial artist. "If you guys aren't afraid, then are you looking for something?" Ziqin's playful expression became even more obvious as he asked again. Facing Ziqin's questioning, the 6 people couldn't bear it. Almost at the same time, the other 5 people looked at Yao Tingfei. Being betrayed in such a blatant manner, Yao Tingfei was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He coldly snorted and looked at Ziqin. He was prepared to be a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water and admit to it. "What are you going to look for?" Ziqin asked again. There was a hint of coldness in his eyes as he looked at Yao Tingfei. Yao Ting suddenly couldn't bring himself to say the words that were on the tip of his tongue. This was because he had thought of an extremely serious problem. If he admitted that he had gone to look for Lei Ming, what would he do if Ziqin became angry and wanted to kill him? In this situation, it was obvious that no one would protect him. Furthermore, for the sake of the Xiantian technique, it was very likely that everyone would vent their anger on him in order to curry favor with Ziqin. When that time came, the losses would outweigh the gains. While Yao Tingfei's expression changed rapidly, he already had an idea in his heart. He snorted and said, "I just went to pee, but it's not very nice to pee here, so I was going to pee further away. Who knew that they would follow me?" This was a very lousy excuse. Piss? To hell with it. But at this moment, it seemed to be an excellent excuse. Ziqin sneered. It was impossible for him to ask the others if they were going to pee as well. His original intention was to force Yao Tingfei into a corner, so that he could take the opportunity to kill one of them. But who would have thought that the other party would react so quickly? "Brother Ziqin, you just went in. I wonder what's inside," Qin Li said in an extremely flattering manner. "Yeah, Brother Ziqin, we're also very curious about what's inside." At the same time, several other Xiantian realm warriors also said. Ziqin glanced at the crowd and said indifferently, "There's a Xiantian technique inside." "What? A Xiantian technique? Is that true?" Everyone's gaze fell on Ziqin, their eyes flashing with a sharp light. "It's the real deal," Ziqin said with a serious expression. Everyone's breathing became rapid, but they didn't lose their minds. Even if there was a Xiantian technique inside, they had to be able to go in first. Ziqin's serious expression turned into a smile as he said, There's more than one Xiantian technique inside, but I can't guarantee that I'll be able to obtain it. More than one Xiantian technique? This made everyone's minds extremely lively. All kinds of ideas emerged from the bottom of their hearts. But the premise was that they had to open the 9 layers of restrictions. If they couldn't open them, not to mention that there was more than one Xiantian technique, even if there were thousands or hundreds of them, it wouldn't be of any use. More than one Xiantian technique? That's great. But Brother Ziqin, I wonder if you can open these 9 layers of restrictions? Qin Li suddenly asked, and the others also looked at Zichen eagerly. Zichen's brows furrowed slightly as a troubled expression appeared on his face. What's wrong? Is it difficult? Everyone looked at Zichen. Zichen shook his head and said, It's not difficult. These restrictions aren't difficult to break, but what? Brother Zichen, as long as we can help, just say the word. That's right, Brother Zichen. Just tell us what you need us to do. The group of people instantly became bold, and they kept calling him Brother Zichen, which immediately drew the relationship between both sides closer. Zichen's face was still filled with hesitation, and he said with difficulty, I don't need your help, and you can't help with these restrictions. Seeing that everyone was getting more and more anxious, Zichen paused and said, Because breaking these restrictions will consume too much of my energy, and everyone knows that I have almost no resources on me, so, seeing Zichen's difficult expression, everyone wanted to go up and slap him to death. If you want resources, just say it. Why do you have to beat around the bush? What do you mean you have no resources on you? Damn it! You robbed so many resources before, and you still say you have no resources? When the group of Xiantian warriors heard this, their expressions changed slightly. Obviously, they didn't expect that Zichen would take advantage of this opportunity to extort them. But this extortion was done at the perfect time. Even if they were angry, they couldn't do anything about it. Everyone present was shrewd and crafty. Compared to Xiantian techniques, what was a mere bit of resources? Immediately, one of the Xiantian warriors said with a smile, Brother Zichen, you're too much. We're already embarrassed to let you break such a large restriction by yourself. Moreover, you consumed so much energy, so we naturally feel bad. That's right, Brother Zichen. We still have some resources on us. We hope they'll be useful for your recovery. The others also smiled and expressed that they would give Zichen some resources. Zichen had a troubled look on his face as he said, This isn't too good, right? After all, I can only recover with mid-grade origin liquid. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. Can you not be so blunt? Everyone said, It's only right. Then, they took out yuan liquid and gave it to Zichen. Zichen said again, That's not very appropriate. My consumption is too great. The punch I demonstrated to Yao Tingfei a few days ago required several 100 drops of yuan liquid. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched even more. At this moment, many of them had the impulse to go up and slap Zichen to death. Obviously, after being blunt, he was starting to rob again. His meaning was also very clear. He needed a lot of resources. If it's too difficult, then forget it. I'll just slowly recover and slowly break the restriction. After all, I can only understand 4 Xiantian techniques inside. I can't guarantee that everyone will get one. Zichen sighed. Brother Zichen, you're treating us as outsiders. We know that your consumption is great, and we feel bad about it. Here's 1,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid. Is that enough? Qin Li was a little hesitant at first, but after hearing Zichen's words, he immediately took out 1,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid. Zichen hesitated for a moment, then immediately took it. It's enough, it's enough. It's enough for one use. Zichen's heavy breathing made everyone want to vomit blood. Since he said so, then they'd take it one by one. Moreover, 1,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid for a Xiantian technique was a huge bargain. Not to mention 1,000 drops Even 10,000, 100,000, or a million drops for a Xiantian technique would be a huge profit. Moreover, there are at least 4 Xiantian techniques inside. Not to mention comprehending 4, even 2 or 1 would be worth it. Next, Hizhe began to give Ziqin 1,000 drops of yuan liquid. Next was Zhongmeng, who also gave 1,000 drops. Naturally, it couldn't be less than the first. Then it was Lanlang. After Lanlang, the rest of the Hotian realm cultivators also gave their yuan liquids. They couldn't compare to Xiantian realm cultivators, and 1,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid was not a small amount. They all slandered each other in their hearts, reluctantly handing over their yuan liquids to Ziqin. Among them, Yao Tingfei was the most pained. It seemed that he had seen Ziqin twice, and both times he had been ripped off. Moreover, each time he had been ripped off twice. Thank you. You'll definitely gain something. After Ziqin received Yao Tingfei's yuan liquid, this was the first time he thanked him. Receiving Ziqin's first thanks didn't make Yao Tingfei happy. Instead, he wanted to cry. In the end, the one who didn't give anything was Xia Exan. When he saw Ziqin come out, an awkward expression appeared on his face. But when he stepped forward, he gave Ziqin an apologetic smile and said, "It's just a small token of appreciation. I hope you accept it." Ziqin swept it with his spiritual sense. His mind shook slightly. There were actually 2,000 drops of mid-grade yuan liquid, twice as much as the others. Ziqin smiled and accepted it. In fact, Xia Xian really did feel very apologetic. He hadn't stopped Yao Tingfei and the others. This action clearly showed that he didn't trust Ziqin. After Ziqin came out, he obviously noticed this and was naturally dissatisfied. Furthermore, Xia Xian guessed that Ziqin had done this because the others didn't trust him. After taking away all the yuan liquid, Ziqin turned around, leaving his back to the others. Everyone immediately retreated, putting enough distance between them to show their sincerity. After standing up, Ziqin began to accumulate power. Golden lightning surged out from his body like serpents of lightning, spreading and wreaking havoc in all directions. Ziqin's hands had already turned completely golden. Then, carrying a surging golden energy, he imprinted it on the restriction. Although the energy Ziqin imprinted on the restriction was frightening, it was still much weaker than Qin Li's full power attack. However, it was precisely such an ordinary strike that triggered the restriction when it landed on it. In the next moment, the restriction trembled and a crack appeared in the middle of it. Seeing Ziqin break open a crack in the barrier so easily, everyone was delighted. But they also felt that Ziqin was shameless enough. Obviously, this little consumption was not even enough to use a drop of liquefied origin essence. Just as Ziqin was about to break the seal, Lei Ming, who had been meditating outside, suddenly opened his eyes. Because the Torvosaurus that was coiling around his waist earlier had turned into tens of meters in the next moment. The Torvosaurus that had revealed its true form directly stretched out a sharp claw. Under Lei Ming's dumbstruck expression, it grabbed him and flew towards the teleportation circle that was leaving this place at an extremely fast speed. P.S. It's 4 p.m. Please vote. He complained a little. I only want to be in the top 10. Because of the event, I was only given half of the profits at first. Now I'm giving all of it. However, the competition seems to be too intense. It's as if the PK votes are free this month. I've been doing my best to update this month, but it seems that my efforts are not enough. I need everyone to work together to maintain the top 10. I'll make another promise. If I can maintain the top 10 this month, all the chapters this month won't count. On a certain day next month, there will be 10 chapters. Since we're talking about the 10 chapters, let's talk about the February update. February was the month that was the most criticized. The updates were very weak, but at the end of the month, it was 240,000 words. Among the hundreds of books on the website, it was the 11th most updated word list. If you look at this data, it should be quite a lot. Therefore, I really didn't slack off in February. Moreover, my character is still there, and I can still trust him.